McIntosh going to the top of your screen. That's where Bennett will throw it. McIntosh makes a move. Touchdown, Georgia.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Dracovic trying to go downfield, though. There's Zay at the 10. Inside the 5, he'll score once again.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Rising over the middle, and it's caught. Dalton Kincaid to the outside. He's home free. Touchdown, Utah.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Pump fake to the right side, looking back left, gives it to Gibbs, got running room, 35-30. Gibbs makes a man miss, 25-20, down the sideline, 10, inside the 5, makes a man miss again, into the end zone, touchdown, Alabama, Jahmyr Gibbs, what a move, Crimson Tide, a 37-yard touchdown play.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Second down, right side, and it's picked off again. It's Christian Gonzalez with his second interception this quarter.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
And here we go on this Monday as we start yet a new week. Another week of 365 Sports. Good afternoon. We will get into the NCAA men's basketball bracket release as far as the first one. Unlike in football, this one seems to have some true grit to it. Kansas flexed their muscles over the weekend in men's basketball. Jim Leonard might be headed to the NFL, and some clock changes, at least perhaps on the horizon, when it comes to college football. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, I'm David Smoak, and this is 365 Sports. Let's get straight to men's basketball. These are the top seeds by the NCAA, including Jamie Pollard of Iowa State. Their AD is on this NCAA men's basketball selection committee. This is as of today, or as of, I guess, this weekend. The number one seeds are Alabama, Houston, Kansas, and Purdue. I think that's, there's one or two you could say could be a part of it, but that seems to make sense. Purdue has had the best start of everybody. Of course, Alabama's been good. The bad loss they had, to Oklahoma, but they've been salty. Houston back to number one overall in the country, and Kansas, well, they're kind of starting to smoke that motor a little bit.
Well, three of them are running away with their leagues. One of them is the defending national champ that's in the best basketball conference in the country. And is in first place now. They've got some great wins, especially here lately. Saturday was one of the strangest kind of games you're ever going to see, where they commit one turnover but make no shots in the first half. Baylor doesn't miss in the first half. Then Kansas is barely even stopped by Baylor, like gotten in their way in the second half. Yeah, it was a crazy, crazy game, but they certainly have announced their presence with authority the last week or so.
I mean, yeah, that makes sense to see those teams. I think UCLA's starting to get up there as well when you're looking at the rankings. Virginia, Arizona, all poking around there. But Purdue obviously slipping a little bit after last week. And, here we are 2 weeks to go in the regular season, and getting down to the nitty-gritty. 4 games left for Baylor, and after that loss to Kansas, now really up against it as far as, having to basically hope that you win out and hope that somebody trips up Kansas a couple of times, which is unlikely, or that it works out in some way like that. But, Alabama's been basically all year long doing, their thing. And as you said, the Oklahoma loss is still kind of a weird deal that just sort of popped up during that Big 12 SEC challenge. But outside of that, for the most part, they've been very good, and obviously just lost their last one. But you can't complain too much about the Tide. Houston's been very good. It's amazing what Kelvin Sampson's done there. Kansas is, hitting at the right time. And Purdue just slipped, but they've been pretty good all year long as well. So, yeah, that's a salty 4, and I think there's a couple other teams that are jostling for maybe a spot there, but not too much to complain about.
2 teams from the Big 12 are number 2 seeds. Both of them could still get to a number 1 seed. Not all 3, Kansas, Texas, or Baylor. Baylor, of course, has to make up for some lost ground. They're going to have to win at home next Saturday, this Saturday against Texas. And they're going to need, as Craig mentioned, someone to knock off Kansas. Kansas ends the season in Austin, but right now, both Kansas and Texas, 10-4, Baylor, 9-5. Those are the number 2 seeds. Craig reeled off every one of those teams. The number 3 seeds are Tennessee. I played golf yesterday with John Gifford. He's a big Vols fan. They've had a couple of guys out, but they're still very dynamic. They have the win against Texas. Virginia, who beat Baylor earlier. Iowa State, who beat Baylor earlier, had the loss to Kansas State, and a huge win for Jerome Tang and company. They host Baylor tomorrow in Manhattan. And the number 4 seeds, Indiana, Marquette, Gonzaga, and Xavier. And so those are, at least for now, all of this can change between now and the next time they have the release. 23 days until the NCAA tournament tips off in the first 4 on March the 14th. 23 days, and the tournament will begin. All right, so there's that. Now, in the Big 12, I mentioned the teams at the top, KU and Texas. KU tonight plays in Fort Worth against a team in TCU that can be up and down. Texas plays at home against Iowa State, an explosive team that did not close out in the win again in the loss to Kansas State in Manhattan. Oklahoma State tonight plays at West Virginia. Kansas State, Iowa State 8-6. TCU, Oklahoma State 7-7. Tech and West Virginia 4-10. And Tech now is one of those teams that, again, they need to finish almost flawlessly. But when they get into Kansas City, who knows? I don't think that they would be anywhere in the top 3 or 4 or 5 favorites because they're 4-10, but they're starting to play a little bit better. Oklahoma had an absolute chance to win down in Austin this weekend. They couldn't finish the deal. They did tie it up to force overtime. They are 3-11.
Yeah, I don't know. The thing about if they get in Kansas City, they're going to have to win the tournament
that's
to
what I
get
meant.
in, which means that they've got to win 4 games because they're going to be one of those bottom seeds. And they haven't won 4 games in a row, since the conference season started. So I doubt you're going to do it over 4 days if you're Tech. But, strange things happen.
I mean, they could do it by winning tomorrow night. That'd be 4 in a row.
Yeah.
That would, yeah. Because there was a time we started wondering, are they going to end up like 2-16 or 3-15?
I mean, just saying that they haven't done it, but they could do it tomorrow night. I mean, they've won 3 in a row, so they're at Oklahoma tomorrow, and I don't think that's a game that they can't possibly win. So yeah, I mean, they haven't done it yet, but they could very well do it tomorrow night. But to your point, Paul, they got to do more than that, right?
Yeah, they do it. They got to do it 4 days in a row. They don't get to do it over 2 weeks.
And they got to, whatever they got right now, they also have to continue, sustain that. They still need to win some games, but then you're right. No matter what they do to close out the regular season with 4 games left, the best they could get to would be 8-10, which is pretty good.
Wow.
That's pretty good in the Big 12. That's if you get to that point, and you still might need to win the tournament.
If you get to 8-10 on an 8-game winning streak and then win 2 games in the tournament, and then you're on a 10-game winning streak, you'll be fine.
Yep.
And they can probably, look, the league's crazy. I mean, people have been streaky all year long. So if they close out like that, but.
Yeah, let's see what they do. Their next game is going to be at Oklahoma. That's a game based on kind of a schizophrenic team in Oklahoma. Also, now let's see, Paxton Tech making the NIT. I think that's a given. They would also be great for the NIT because if they host a game, even though it's not the NCAA, they'll end up with a really, really good crowd. Mike Bean, KU wins another Big 12 championship. With whatever Bill Self dialed up in that speech at halftime, whatever they did, and they changed some things up as well, that was impressive. I saw Paul Saturday afternoon at halftime. There was a get-together for Adam Batchelor, a huge Iowa State fan, and I was there just for a few seconds. But Baylor was up 13 at halftime, and I said, they're not going to shoot that well. There's no way they could match that 9 threes in the first half with Flagler and George and Cryer, and sure enough, they didn't even get close to that, and then Kansas started increasing the pressure. And give Jay Billis credit for this. During game day, he said the difference between Baylor and Kansas, Baylor's offense is better overall because of their guards, but KU's defense is much better than Baylor's, and we've seen Baylor struggle, and they gave up one after another point-blank layup or dunk in that opening minutes of the second half.
Kansas's worst games have been when, well, particularly Dwan Harris. If Dwan Harris scores more than 3 points, they're undefeated. So, you know, the games that they've lost have been his worst games. When he plays even okay, then they're going to win a game, especially on offense. But and he's a really good defensive player anyhow. Yes, Kansas defense is much better. I expected the 13-point lead to go away and it to be a tight game down the stretch, not to the point where Kansas could have legitimately, had they maybe been playing another team, put in the walk-ons in the last 2 minutes.
No, it was a destruction. They absolutely took Baylor's heart and soul. Baylor stayed in Kansas, as even Scott Drew told us last week. They have Kansas State on the road tomorrow. So, college football. Ross Dellinger, SI.com. College football leaders are moving closer to recommending clock rule changes meant to reduce plays in games for safety and game length reasons, telling SI Now. Under one proposal, gaining wide support, the clock would run after a first down. Now stop, leave it there for a second, please, Garrett. When you used to go out of bounds or there was a first down out of bounds, the clock used to stop. Now, if you get a first down, and there maybe with a little bit of time left in each half, basically you do set the ball, the clock starts again. I know they do that in the NFL even faster. I mean, the number of really plays run in the NFL game are very minimal. The other proposals, the 4 proposals to speed up a game, are prohibiting consecutive timeouts, icing the kicker, no untimed down at the end of the first and third quarter. In other words, if there's a defensive penalty or whatever else. Clock runs after first downs except inside 2 minutes of a half. So in other words, you pick up a first down, they set the chains, the clock's never going to stop. Clocks run on incompletions once the ball is spotted.
That one's not going to happen. But
here's one of the things. I hope not. This could save either 9 to 15 plays a game. Why are we trying to save plays? Why don't we figure out a better way to shorten halftime? With all due respect to all that goes on at halftime. Yes, people need a chance to go get a beer, to go to the bathroom, to get something to eat, whatever. Yes, there's some pageantry at halftime. Figure out a way to shorten halftime by 6 to 8 minutes, because the NFL can do it in 12. College football's halftime is at least 20 to 25 minutes, maybe longer.
It's 20 on the clock, and then, maybe there's a little bit of delay on the back end if you're having a big homecoming extravaganza, but number 4 is not going to happen. I think you throw number 4 in there so that the ones that make sense, like number 3 and number 2, get passed. But yeah, they definitely need to shorten halftime.
Craig, which one of those would you, if you had to get one of them, if you had to pass one of them, and maybe you like all 4, which one of those do you like or not like? Put those back up again, Garrett, if you don't mind.
I'm good with the top 3. I don't agree with number 4. I don't think that the clock should run on incompletions once the ball is spotted. I think that that's the one that I feel like most people will be like, no, that's going a little bit too far. Halftimes. I don't really pay that close attention to halftimes. Honestly, I felt like the one at the Super Bowl was too long. Mm-hmm. That was clearly that was a Super Bowl special long halftime, and I'm sure the Chiefs still come back, but there was that chatter about like, man, they'd had that extra time to kind of prepare and get their stuff together. But, I'm not somebody that's there for halftime. So it's like, how long is it? 20 minutes? Okay, I'll check back in 19 and a half and let's get back to the game. That's how I am. So, if they shortened it, I wouldn't probably even blink. I'd probably notice, but it wouldn't be that big of a deal to me personally. I know that there's other people like they're there for halftime, but it is a college football game after all. So, with the halftime thing, I'm kind of whatever with that. But yeah, I think that the top 3 are all fine. The consecutive timeouts on icing kicks, I think that's kind of silly. And really with the first, really with that one and I mean, I guess that one. I mean, that one. How often does that even happen? I don't really feel like that's that big of a deal. I mean, that's certain situations. It's certainly not every game where you're icing a kicker with back-to-back timeouts.
Well, and that happens at the end of the game. So
Right.
really, you're what you're doing with that rule is just trying to make sure, like the NFL does, what the NFL wants. And they can say this is about safety all they want, which is totally secondary. And what they really want is they want the first game to go from noon to 3.
Right.
They want the second game to go from 3 to 6.
3:15 to 6.
3:15 to 6,
to
yeah.
6:30.
But yeah, they want that and for 3 hours, and then they want the next one to go from 7 to 10. That's what they want.
Yeah.
That's so when they're triple header window or the games that people flip around, they're nice and compartmentalized and good and average. And then if people get hurt less because of this, bonus. But that's not the most important thing in this.
But I think the top two, I mean, those happen on occasion. So those won't even be in every game as affected by consecutive timeouts on icing kicks or untimed downs at the end of the first and third quarter. Like on occasion you'll get those, but not necessarily every time. So like if they want to throw those in there, that's fine. That'll shave a little time here and there on, not even for every single game necessarily. But the clock running after first downs, except inside of 2.5 minutes, I'm all for that. Mm-hmm. I feel like college football does waste an insane amount of time, like from play to play. But my biggest thing is, sitting there, and I already can feel it will be September. It'll be 103 degrees outside, and it'll take 15, 20 minutes to play the first 3 minutes of the first quarter, because in the Big 12 there's a instant replay, like 4 plays in on a on a 3rd and 2. We got to stop the game down to get this measurement. It's just, but really it's all the TV breaks. I mean, they shove those in left and right. So you play like 3 plays, you have like 1 moment of stoppage, and then all of a sudden it's 4.5 minute commercial break. Or
you gotta pay all that millions.
No, I understand. I understand that advertising dollars are why everybody's doing the job that they're doing for the most part, or why a lot of people are doing the jobs they're doing, including us. But I mean, there's an awful lot of time that you talk about games bogging down. They bog down as much because of the commercial breaks as much as anything as far as play goes, in my opinion. But I understand you got to pay bills, and you can't eliminate those. So, I mean, I'm cool, like I said, with the first 3. I think that last one, though, the clock's running on incompletions once the ball is spotted. It's not going to fly for most anybody.
Okay, how about this? And this is something, a couple of things I was going to – first of all, the reviews. I understand turnovers, scoring plays, critical moments in like, for example, 4th down. But the Big 12 is well known for this.
They're doing 3rd and 1s.
3rd and 1 early in the game, 8 minutes left in the first quarter, and someone runs out of bounds, and it's 3rd down and 1. They give them the first down, or 2nd and 8. They pick up the first down. They'll go back, and the eye in the sky could help prevent that quickly or whatever. The other part of it is when the offense substitutes, the umpire will not let the offense snap the ball if the defense wants to substitute. That's now more prevalent than maybe even the reviews and all the other things we're talking about.
Yeah, but the clock can be running during that time too, so that's not really costing any time or slowing the game down. It's slowing the offense down. But if the offense substitutes while the clock is running, then I mean that's still. That's not that much of an issue. Number 4, the incomplete passes and running the ball after the ball is spotted. That would end the same way. Remember, and it's been a decade or so ago, they decided that they would keep the clock running after the kickoff. So if you kick the ball off, and then when you establish possession, they spot the ball, they start running the clock. Well, what they didn't like was at the end of the half, if you scored with 28 seconds left, then catching the ball in the kickoff was no benefit to you, because you might only have 1 timeout, because once they set the ball,
you mean a fair catch or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, even nothing was doing anything wasn't really even of a worth it to you. So they got rid of that because no coaches knew how to strategize for, okay, everybody be ready to run out there and do this because the clock's going to run as soon as we're tackled. Or they spot the ball, and usually you have that time to, kind of reset and be like, okay, we're going to start with this play here. Yeah, so they changed that rule. I think same thing would happen on incomplete.
Number 3 definitely
for targeting a lot of that. Go ahead.
Number 3 would definitely hurry things up. I mean, not constantly stopping the clock for every first down, especially when offenses are clicking first downs like it's nobody's business. They just go, first downs are not the hardest thing in the world to come by. And now, you can really stretch the clock a long ways when every single first down, it's all right, stop the clock again. First down, stop the clock again. I mean, I think doing that to where the clock doesn't stop outside of those 2 minutes would be perfectly fine, and that alone feels like it would shave like 15 minutes off of games, because the clock does stop way too often, especially when you get some of these offenses that are really clicking, and they can have an entire drive and take like 15 seconds off the clock, because they can go the whole field and like barely any time comes off because it's just first down after first down after first down. So
obviously you'd have to let the sticks get marked, if it's a 48-yard play. But I was not for that one. But Craig and Paul, I kind of don't mind number 3 as much now.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's kind of silly to constantly stop the clock every time you register a first down. I do feel like that happens at the high school level. I feel like we waste a lot of time with that, and it drags games out far longer than they need to be. Like, especially if you got like a blowout and you just get this game over with, and yet it drags on another half hour because the team just keeps picking up first downs and you keep stopping the clock, when really the idea would be just run that bad boy in some situations. But I know this isn't high school football, but like that happens there far too often. I feel like it's like, just keep the clock running.
Do you know that there was a time when the ball went out of bounds, the clock stopped until you snapped it again?
Yeah.
I mean they've already sped this thing up a lot, and a lot of it came to where you had this wide open game. I mean, like when Baylor played during the early years and even during the run with Bryles, their games were always nearly 4 hours, right? Well, because the clock was stopping so much, because they were getting 8 to 12 to 15. They were constantly moving the chains, and they were throwing it to get most of it, although they ran the ball well too.
What the first down rule does is effectively embrace the rule changes that you've made, because you've made changes mostly to protect the offense. And on every level of football.
Okay, yeah.
Every level of football, you've made them to protect the offense. So the defense really doesn't have any recourse unless you do speed up the clock, right? You give them less time and less plays. This is something where it can benefit safety and help the defense without having to go, okay, Deacon Jones rules are okay there again. Also, it just embraces the fact that the inverse ratio of how fast an offense gets first downs and how long a game are completely opposite. So, if you're a team like Oklahoma runs the spread and can get 12 first downs on a drive, well, that didn't make the game go any faster. In fact, it made it go way longer, because your offense is going so fast. This clock stopping all these times, you're just adding minutes to this game in real time, not even on game clock.
I think the first two are going to make minimal difference. I mean, I think I said that a second ago, but I mean, those are really not even every week situations that you run into. I think the number 4 is probably universally despised by most. So I think number 3 is really where you probably get your best debate on the clock running after first downs. And that's in my head just thinking about it. Maybe that's not the best idea. I don't know. We need to probably sit and stew on it a little bit longer, but just off the top of my head, I do think of like Friday night games and the clock just never seeming like it's rolling, because teams are just going first down. Now, the flip side of that is from like a coach's perspective, or from, I saw some comments of like, well, it's football. I don't want it to end. I don't ever want it to end. And I'm looking at it from like a sideline reporter point of view. If I do want it to, I do eventually, I want to go home. I do. But yeah, I mean, for those folks who are like, hey, we only get, college football half the year, I want games to last as long as possible. I mean, I can understand that to an extent, but just because football's on doesn't mean football's fun to always watch. You know what I mean?
No, there are times. You're right.
There's times just get the game over with. Yeah. Like, come on, I don't care like how much of a junkie or whatever the phrase you want to use is. Like, I get that. I really do get that, but there's time, like, just get the freaking game over with. Like, come on now.
The average game duration, 2018 was 3 hours and 16 minutes. 2019, the same. 2020 jumped to 3 hours and 21 minutes. 2021, it went back to 3:18, again, 3 minutes, and then back to 3:21. 3 hours and 21 minutes game time, not broadcast time, right? Game time from the time it kicks off until the time ends, 3 hours and also 21 minutes. 5 minutes longer than the average 5 years ago, so they are kind of now losing grip of that 3 hours and 16 minutes.
And the other thing about that, so for every one Iowa that's games are probably right about 3 hours exactly, because they don't run games like that, there are 25 Tennessees whose games are going to last 25 minutes longer because of the way they run.
All right.
the
Do you guys know how many more
The commercials are still the part, though. Like that's still
not going away.
That's the thing. We just sit here, I'm glad we're having the conversation because we can agree or disagree on certain things. But like I said, a couple of those are minimal at best. Like you're maybe saving like 2.5 seconds on average a year, probably with some of the, you know what I'm like, the icing of the kicker. Like how often do we truly see that? So those I feel like have really minimal impact whatsoever. The biggest reason why these games are so long is the dadgum commercials. Like bottom line is that's why the broadcasts are so long.
If you ice the kicker, you can ice the kicker and a minute later start the clock and let's get going to the play clock, but they'll go take a 3 or 4 minute break. Now, the FBS games see about 2.3 replays, stoppages per game. That, to me, I would have lost millions of dollars. My home, I don't have a home, but anything else I own would have lost that. I would have thought it was so much more than that. Now, how many more plays? The NFL game on average is 3 hours and 10 minutes. There's that little pigeonhole, Paul, that from noon to 3:15, because they have that 3:15 start, now even 3:25. That's the perfect, and then boom, to about 6:15, 6:30, and then the night game. How many more plays per game? The NFL's at 3 hour and 10 minute game. The college game is 3:21 right now. How many more plays per game do you think the NFL or the college football runs compared to the NFL?
I would say at least 25 to 30.
Say that again.
How many more plays per game on average does an FBS game run compared to an NFL game?
I don't know, like 15.
25, Paul. The NFL game averages 155 plays. The average FBS is 180. Remember, in fact, I keep going back to when Baylor ran that offense about as well as you possibly could, and they put up massive numbers, 700 yards, and not even a lot of it was passing, a lot of it was running. They wanted to run 100. They wanted to run 100 plays. They were trying to gas the defense. Go, 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 go. Sometimes it gassed themselves, and they couldn't hold on to a lead at the end.
And while the NFL has taken up some of those concepts, the difference between an 85-man roster and a 53-man roster is why, there's going to always be less plays in the NFL, because even though you're not going to play all 85 of those guys, you still have 20 more people dressed on game day if you needed them, and you could take that chance. In the NFL, if you Baylor could run the offense, or Tennessee can run that offense, because they have 6 guys who can play wide receiver, and you can switch out all that. In the NFL, you might have to make a roster decision that week, like, well, man, we're really short on defensive tackles this week, so we got to make sure that more of those guys are active, so these 2 wide receivers who haven't caught a pass in 8 weeks are just going to sit there, so we don't have them.
Those guys are special teams players.
Well, they might be, but they might also not be on the, you might sit them down because you need, you're down to your last defensive tackle and you need these other 3 guys. So 2 wide receivers and a safety sit down, and you're rolling the dice on special teams.
Our guest lineup today at 4 o'clock, Dave Softy Mahler, one of our favorite people in all of media from KJR Radio in Seattle, wanted to get his take on what we've heard from a lot of people about college football. Obviously, today Pete Thamel, ESPN, had a very lengthy and a very nice article, with a lot of different scenarios and this and that when it comes to the future of college football. Any more realignment or changes? And you haven't heard much from Oregon and Washington, and they might be as critical as anybody now going down. And Pete Thamel kind of discusses that. So we're going to hear from Softy Mahler. What really is it even on their radar? Is it something that is maybe more on the radar of other people, or what is happening with Washington's thoughts on what's happening with the Pac-12 going forward? Bernie Wilson covers San Diego. He's an Associated Press writer, but get some thoughts from him at 4:30 on San Diego State. As I mentioned Friday, we had some buffering issues. I reached out to the media relations person with San Diego State to try to see if their AD and or Brady Hoke, the football coach, were available, and it basically was said, and I get it, we're just not making any comments on that right now, which means they really just don't want to either screw it up, or they just don't know enough to talk about it, or they just can't talk about it. It's kind of like a legal situation in the case of this, not legal, but college football. Ashley Hodge, Baylor. How do they respond to getting their teeth kicked in on Saturday afternoon in Lawrence in the second half? David Hellman, Fox Sports, and Paul's Top 5. So those are things that we have today on the table. There's one more Jim Leonhard, remember him, Wisconsin interim head coach? We always thought that maybe even Dave Aranda could have never been able to confirm it because we haven't talked to Dave Aranda, whether or not that might have been Baylor's next defensive coordinator. Of course, Matthew Palages, who came back from Oregon. Jim Leonhard interviewed, per sources, interviewed Jim Leonhard by the Eagles as they look to replace their coordinators. He's a 10-year NFL safety, played the game, and so now he is at least in the circle of what Philadelphia's trying to do as a defensive coordinator. We always wondered about, would he just sit out? He has enough money, what he's owed to do that. But that's the story on Jim Leonhard. Couple of other notes from me over the weekend and from you as well. I watched the Netflix series Full Swing. I've watched the first 3 episodes. If you love golf or you just like, just behind the scenes stuff, it really is fantastic. It is really well done. It made me look at Ian Pohl. I always have kind of liked him because he's such a fiery, competitive part of the heart and soul of the European Ryder Cup team. Yeah, at times he can be an ass. Well, so can I. It was a different perspective. Now, again, you can like or not like Liv. You can say the consequences too hard. I understand what the PGA Tour is doing as well. I understand, I guess, what Liv's trying to do, and then it can get political. But what you saw from Brooks Koepka, who was dominating golf for 3 years and now is like shrunk. He's a mental midget, and he admits it. It's fantastic. That was a part of what's part of Full Swing. There's 3 episodes. I've watched it, so I hope you had a chance. If you haven't, it's worth the work. It's worth the time to get that series off Netflix called Full Swing. One quick note about Baylor. Baylor's softball team beat the number 1, and I'm talking 800-pound gorilla in college softball in Oklahoma yesterday at the Getterman Classic. Shocking win. Great win for for Glenn Moore and company. But just wanted to throw that out there because I thought that was pretty special for them to beat Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge win, and they had a big weekend, went 4-0. Also threw, a perfect game on Friday, which is the first 7-inning perfect game that had ever been thrown in the program's history. So, yeah, I mean, they started off in Las Vegas last week and then were home for the first time and went 4-0 and beat, threw a perfect game and then beat number 1 Oklahoma. So that was a pretty huge weekend for Glenn Moore. And, I don't know what that does as far as expectations or whatnot, but they've, I think, cracked into the top 25 now, as they should. They're 8-1 and obviously beat number 1. So, yeah, I mean, that's great for them. It was a very busy weekend, a lot of mixed results for basketball, I think, in particular. Not the best of weeks. I mean, you had the men beating West Virginia, but outside of that, you had the Kansas loss, and then the women right now are just in full, whatever you want to describe it as, panic mode, or it's not that necessarily, just frustration mode, I think probably be the best word for it, is they've now gone on a real slide, and you can tell that I think, Nikki Collin had some comments after the game, and you could tell there's some outside noise getting to her. I don't really see much of that on Twitter. I don't really venture outside of social media, though, beyond that. It's just not my thing. I don't have, every app that there is. I just don't do that. That's not me. No judgment on those that do. So when she's talked about this, basically referred to this outside noise or whatever, I hadn't really seen much of that. I'd seen people frustrated or, they lose again or whatever. But I guess it's coming from Facebook. It's kind of the gist that I got, is a lot of it's coming from there. So I definitely haven't seen it. And I'm sure just, on campus, there's probably some discussion about it. Perhaps it gets around to her. I don't know, but I know it is an incredibly frustrating time for them right now, and we'll see if they can snap out of their funk. But, yeah, tough position for the Bears to be in right now on the women's side. But softball, certainly a couple of days to celebrate, and we'll see if they can keep it up.
All right, I want to say this. Do we have the audio of Nikki? I was hoping to be able to sit down and visit with her at least a little bit this week. And it doesn't look like the timing's going to work because they're traveling again. But this is something that we get the email with the stats and box score, and then there's the post game as well. And Shelby does a great job of getting that out. And so I happened to listen to this, and I don't remember when it was. It might have been actually yesterday at some point. But this right here, with what Craig was mentioning, I want you to hear it. There may be some reverberation in the audio. But here it's a 30 seconds.
I'm just going to keep coaching my butt off. And we're going to keep getting better. And, you know, and it just doesn't matter what people say. And, you know, we continue to play competitive basketball. And we're going to turn the corner. And it may not look like everybody wants it to look for us. But I believe in Sarah's ability to shoot it, and Jamie's ability to shoot it, and Jaden's ability to attack and get to the rim, like, you know, and hit her jump shot, make an open three, and you know, just like when Bugs and Bella and Kate are struggling, I believe in them too.
All right, I'm going to say that Dickie Collins is an incredibly good person, and she's also a good coach. But she looks like frazzled. And I can imagine, you take over the program, you still had success last year despite the second-round exit when you lost in the NCAA tournament. She wanted that pressure. She has that pressure. But that right there, she looks like, I know that those around her are trying to make sure, and she's a tough woman, but that looked to me, and I shared that with you guys yesterday evening, that looked like someone who's right there on the edge, not of a breakdown, but really on the edge. They've lost four in a row, I think it might be, after that huge win against Oklahoma. And, man, I'm thinking about how those around her need to be helping her quite a bit right now, because she really looks like she's at her wit's end.
They've had nothing but injuries all year long, you know, in and out of the lineup. So nobody's really, I say nobody, but they haven't had the same lineup for consecutive games a lot this year, which is really affects them. They're in a 4-game skid, which the program is not used to, although most of the players that are there now, you know, are pretty far removed from the last national championship. But even still, it's tough. And, you know, when you're in a 4-game skid, you know how to get out of it. And then, you know, you've lost a couple different ways. You've lost a close game that goes to overtime. You've lost on the road. You've gotten blown out. You've lost at home. Like,
all right, let's put this in perspective.
There's nothing like
a 4-game losing streak, and again, it's unfair, but it's part of the deal. 4-game losing streak would be as much as any losses in a season Baylor women have had for 20 years.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's
There's 7-7 in the Big 12.
Yeah,
I mean, that's unheard of territory, and it's just, I would imagine incredibly frustrating. Not even so much, you know, how I mean, she looks, but just hearing her have to go up to a post-game press conference again and talk about another loss that was, I mean, if they beat Iowa State the other day, then everything's probably okay, I mean, to a certain extent. But the fact that they really kind of choked that game away, honestly, I mean, they did. They did. And that was a crushing blow, because there was your top 25 get-right game. There was your stop the bleeding game. Here's your big opportunity, and you choked it away, and you let it slip, and you go to double overtime and lose in double OT. So it's just even more insult to injury. It's just like pouring a can of salt right into the wound, basically. So yeah, I mean, they've had opportunities to be on the right side of things, but it's just like they can't finish all of a sudden. They can't finish a game, and you know, you keep going, well, you got these 2 freshmen that are so good, these 2 freshmen, Little Paige Bugs and Fauneroy, and that's great that the future looks bright, but I think everybody's worried about the present getting away from you. Like, yeah, you want to coach them 4 years from now, that'd be great. Are you going to be here in 4 years? Because if you're going 7-7 in Big 12 play through the first 14 games year after year, that's not the standard that people are used to, and I don't think anybody's expecting, you know, mulky results, just like there was going to be some seamless transition to where, you know, they lose a game and it's like the only game they've lost in 2.5 months. I don't think anybody thought that. Like, Mulkey deserves credit. She's one of the greatest coaches of all time. So there was just going to be like no skipping a beat. But I mean, to lose 7 games in conference play with 4 still remaining to go, I mean, you could very well finish under 500 in the Big 12. And there's just no really spin in that. I mean, that's a fall from grace that's a bit more than even the fallback that you were expecting. And I'm not like calling for anything. I'm just saying, like, that's why people are feeling the way that they are, and that's why she seems as frustrated as she is because I think we all know, like, yeah, this is not what anybody signed up for or expected in any way.
Yeah, it's a tough run. Kim Mulkey's 5th year at Baylor, she won the national title.
And the Big 12's not that great.
No, it's not. Texas is really okay. Vic Schaefer is just and his team better. Iowa State's okay. Baylor had won. And by the way, and what happens, and I've noticed this over the years, and in all my years in radio and talk shows, and this now show with 365 Sports, we're not calling for anything with Nikki Collin.
No.
We're just being honest and having a fair conversation. And I haven't heard anybody say that she should be let go or she should fire or she should resign. I've heard none of that. And I think I'm pretty tied into the program or the athletic department with that. And I've heard others say that as well. And that also could be slightly paranoia because of the expectations, and it could just be kind of a phrase you use when you feel the pressure. We will get more answers for you, but it's a fair conversation, and wanted to mention that. When we come back, much more to get to at 4 o'clock. Dave Softy Mahler, what's Washington thinking about all this speculation, and what is real from what the Huskies are thinking? That and more, this is. And thank you for your day today, 365 Sports. Ideal MRI, Central Texas Marketplace, just inside the Central Texas Marketplace, just off the I-35, the southern part of Waco. I mentioned to you that I've been inside that MRI machine. You don't want to ever be inside one because it means something's hurting you. That means something hurts. Shoulder, knee, back, thigh, hip, whatever it is. But I do know this. When I've had experience with Dr. Rob Maxey and his staff at Ideal MRI, so when I endorse a company, this one here is easy. All of them are easy because they're all good, but this one here, I've been inside their MRI machines. I've had the images sent to me. I've had Dr. Rob Maxey call me that evening and explain what he sees. I've had doctors get it from inside of the uploaded in the protocol. All of that. They're great at what they do, and on top of that, $497. If you need something investigated, you need evidence of what hurts, I promise you will love the results and the price at idealmri.com.
Hey, this is Bryce Petty, former starting quarterback and two-time Big 12 champion, and I know firsthand the importance of being in top shape both on and off the field. So listen up, men. If you're feeling beat down day in and day out and looking for that high-performance edge that separates the men from the boys, then look no further than the Petty Clinic Low T in Waco. Petty Clinic is a comprehensive men's healthcare clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Board-certified Dr. Kent Petty has a special interest in offering the highest quality medical care to men of all ages. Some of the services offered include screening and treatment for low testosterone or thyroid, infertility, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, while offering comprehensive wellness exams and complete men's health lab panels. High performance men, remember, it's not just a Petty thing. This is Bryce Petty, encouraging you to reach out and Google search Petty Clinic Low T or go to pettycliniclowt.com and get your complimentary lab screening today.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry, and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrap fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes, cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
365 Sports. Paul Catalina to my left, Greg Smoak to my right, Emery Winter, Garrett Ross in studio. Jack McKenzie, by the way, is on assignment covering the men's basketball team after the wreckage Saturday afternoon and now tomorrow in Manhattan.
If anybody goes back and watches that game, and if you're a Baylor fan, I don't know why you would, but in my house we do when Kansas wins like that. We caught a good glimpse of Jack at the end of the second half, and he had this look of bewilderment on his face about what he had just witnessed.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, he was. I mean, it was very fast.
Do you have a picture of it? You should have blown that picture up.
But like, yeah, believe me, it's on my DVR. I'll find it and bring it in tomorrow. But he had this look on his face, like, man, this is different than 20 minutes ago. Things changed just that fast.
Yeah, it did. Softy Mahler at 4 on Washington and what they're thinking when it comes. Even if it's on the radar much, is it really a discussion? Washington, Seattle's a pro sports town, but nobody covers Washington athletics like Softy Mahler does. I got to ask you guys a question. Did you watch the NBA All-Star Game or any of the activities or any of the events throughout the weekend?
Not if they were playing in my eyelids.
Yeah, I watched some of the dunk contest, and that was a fun outcome with Mac McClung getting the win. That's a win for white boys everywhere. I mean, who would have ever thought white boy winning the dunk contest? I mean, that's some certain kind of history there. But I mean, that's probably something nobody could ever predicted. But that was cool to see just in general because we obviously saw him play at Texas Tech. Not too long ago, and just last year, right? Was that 2 years ago with Mac McClung? 2 years. Yeah, it was 2 years ago. Wow. Just a couple years ago.
It was kind of a blur his time there.
Well, it's also like around COVID time,
yeah, no,
and again,
you're right.
I keep saying, and it's true. I don't know about anybody else, but really, like post-COVID, just in general, like 2020 on, it just feels weird and different, just timing and all of that, but. So we saw him not that long ago, and obviously he had a bit of a legend surrounding him coming from Georgetown, and just the highlight tapes of his dunks. Everybody knew he could dunk really well, and so that was cool to see that. Just the dunk contest in general, I try to at least peep a little bit of it. It's not always, giving me it doesn't always give me the feeling of like watching, the way I watched when I was younger and the way that felt back then, but. Outside of that, no, I didn't really pay too much attention. I watched 0 seconds of the actual All-Star game. I just All-Star games in general, I don't care that much about anymore. I simply don't, and so I'll maybe pop in for a few seconds here and there. Like I'll watch the home run derby, and maybe if it's just a night where it works, I'll sit and have it on for a few minutes. But with the NBA game, I just had other stuff I'd rather do than sit there and watch that. So. Just the dunk contest for me.
I used to be just as you could absolutely count me out that evening of any kind of an all-star game, even what they do in the National Hockey League. But I have just completely I'm not a viewer. I'm not a viewer, and I understand I do this for a living and all that, but I have other things too. But the slam dunk contest, I'm fortunate that my prime during the prime of the NBA slam dunk contest, whether it was Dominique Wilkins or Spud Webb. That was there. If Jennifer sent me a text, because McClung's a tech guy and she went to tech, that he had won the slam dunk contest, I would not have known it.
Here's my problem. Like, in the slam dunk contest is usually fun. I have not really watched one since Vince Carter had that crazy one, which was just so amazing. The slam dunk contest has become so hit or miss with, look, no offense to Mac McClung, but when I was growing up and watching the slam dunk contest, Jordan did it a couple times, and Dominique Wilkins did it a couple times, and the guys who did it were legit superstars, and Mac McClung is not that. So if you're going to tell me these guys are really good at dunking without anybody in their face, yeah, that's great, but do I care about them outside of that? Then that's what's really not drawn me in, is because, it's fine. When Brent Barry won it that time, I was like, maybe this is kind of done, because he's at
1996.
Yeah. When he did it, I was 16. So I was like, this is changing. And while it was fun to watch, Brent Barry was the sixth man on every team he was on at best.
Yeah.
And so it started to get to that point where
has LeBron ever been in the slam dunk contest?
No.
Yeah. And I wonder, we're now in an age in sports where, and this is part of what we're in, guys opt out of bowl games. You have, when the Spurs were dominant, what they were doing with San Antonio was having the rest days for either Duncan or for Ginobili or for Tony Parker. And now that really, what was that, 8 to 10 years ago? Now it seems like it's like that all the time now. And that just started. And it's accepted. And yeah, it's about the health and making sure you're playing in meaningless games. Well, when the NBA started playing 82 games many, 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 many years ago, or baseball 162, or football now up to 17, I don't think they ever envisioned that people would be taking time off. Everybody gets days off. You do, we do, whatever. But when your main dude has been playing for 20 years or whatever it is, and he's never been in the slam dunk contest, either one, it's boring to him, or two, he doesn't want to be in it and lose, or he just doesn't, it's not important to him.
All those things, but it's also what are you going to do at this point? I mean, that's really going to live up to the hype of LeBron James being in a dunk contest. He's going to jump off the Empire State Building and do backflips with no parachute and then dunk it.
Dominique could have done that.
And you guys are talking about, we're talking about it from 20 years ago. Vince Carter was a long time ago. That was a long time ago. And so, yeah, I think, just things change. There's only so much creativity you can have after a while with dunks. Guys, I saw a post the other day. They were showing a clip of, Jordan, the up and under layup. There was an all-time highlight that now every guy, the 10th man on the bench, can do that same layup. It's no issue. And everybody was commenting about that's not even a big deal anymore. That was a all-time highlight in the 90s and even some of the 2000s. And now, last player on the bench for the worst team in the league can do that same layup, no problem.
Yeah.
The guys have just gotten to be better athletes. But as much of, they've improved athletically or just what have you, where you have a freakazoid like LeBron running around being as athletic as he is, there's still only so much you can do, and so I think we've seen kind of the edges pushed about as far as they can go as far as the creativity and things like that. And I do think that a lot of it, though, goes back to your point of if the biggest star in the NBA has never had the desire to do it for whatever number of reasons he does, the amount of hype that he would have, the inability to probably be able to live up to that, the fact that he could lose and that would be a blemish that he just doesn't want to have to deal with.
How about injuries? How much?
Injuries, the fact you do want to break. These guys, you can say what you want about, resting and all of that. That's Popovich's fault as much as anybody's. But still, I don't blame a guy if he just wants to enjoy All-Star Weekend and not have to get all worked up about the dunk contest. So
look at the way they play the game. They don't really run down the court in the game.
The game itself is nothing compared to an actual basketball game. It's just there's no defense played, and it's just an offense fest, and everybody's just out there to stay healthy, collect their check, be with their buddies, and have a good time, and pull a nice rating. And that's really all it's there. It's not a serious competition. It doesn't need to be a serious competition, but there's a total lack of competition now that I think does like for everybody to kind of just go like, why am I supposed to care about this?
Yeah,
why
how
should
many
I be
times
interested
can you
in
do?
this?
Yeah, how many times can you do a tomahawk flying whatever somersault? Or
Right.
whatever?
Yeah.
So here I'm going to name the champions of the slam dunk contest. I bring this up because I didn't watch it, and I know we need to take a break. Tell me who these name. Let's count the stars. Larry Nance was the opener in 1984.
We're going all the way to 84.
Well, there's not. Dominique Wilkins, Spud Webb, that was one because he was a midget compared to.
Right, he's 5'8".
Yeah. Jordan, Kenny Skywalker, Dominique Wilkins, D. Brown, Ceballos, Harold Miner starts dropping off. Kobe did it. Kobe can do it. 97. Vince Carter in 2000. Again, Josh Smith was pretty highlight 2005. Dwight Howard, which is interesting because the big guys don't usually win this thing. Although all of them are incredible athletes now.
He did the Superman cape and all of that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Donovan Mitchell in 18. And then, again, it seems like, and you wonder maybe is there anything else you could do that's different than when we first saw this? We're like, my God, did you see what Vince Carter or MJ or Dominique Wilkins just did? And Dr. J, of course, my all-time favorite.
No, I mean, that's what – I mean, Craig said that. I was like, there's only so much you can do between – there's only so far people can jump. Most of the time, tall guys can't jump. They can jump up. They can't jump out. The Superman cape one was impressive because here you've got a guy who's 7 feet tall who's going from the free throw line, which usually doesn't happen. That's usually guys who are a little bit smaller. But, yeah, I mean, again, you can't reinvent the wheel. You only have so much space to really do something in and, make it fancy.
Garrett?
Would moving it to like a 12-foot rim and saying you get extra points or something make anything more
Actually, you know what? You dismissed that. That'd be more interesting than what they're
John
doing.
Moran out there on a 12-foot rim.
John Moran don't want to do it though.
But I mean, you know what I'm saying?
If John Moran could do it,
to make it at least more.
Yeah, like say
it difficult.
Yeah, say you get more bonus points for a dunk off a 12.
But would that even increase the injury level or concern even more?
I mean, they're jumping that high anyway.
If we could do the injury card for everything though,
no, but that's kind of where the Popovich Spurs and then people opting
if you
out.
want it to be more interesting, and he's proposing a way to make it interesting, but then our immediate response is, well, what about injuries? Well, then there you go. There's why the dunk contest isn't worth a crap, because people are too worried about getting injured or lack of creativity or just egos. In the case of whatever combination you want to use for LeBron James, for example, since he's the most high-profile guy to not have participated in one.
By the way, Howard, I was just told on the 12-foot rim when he won that.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So there's an idea for you if you want to. I mean, or at least guys could incorporate that more. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's like the Texas A&M thing where every year around this time that it's supposed to happen or around All-Star Weekend, it's like the dunk contest isn't what it used to be in my day when MJ. It's like, yeah, that was 25, 30 years ago, and I'm with you. It's not to me, but I'm also older and I'm not the target audience anymore. So for 18 to 34-year-olds, maybe that was as exciting as when people were watching Spud Webb, or for me, not even just MJ, but like Vince Carter for sure was one of the most standout moments probably ever. And I don't know how many of those they've had since then because, I haven't paid as close attention, but, you have comments of guys like, well, the dunk contest was saved by Mac McClung. And it's like, if it's at that point where even like the legends of the game were talking about it being saved by Mac McClung, then maybe just there is no fixing it. And maybe it's just a concept that's kind of run out of its juice. And maybe that's where we are with it. I doubt it ever goes away entirely, but the days of like having the superstars line up and compete in it, like I think we kind of overrated that anyways. I mean, to a certain extent, because it wasn't like all throughout the 90s and the 80s, like every year it was MJ, Dominique, Kobe, Shaq. I mean, those guys all participated at some point in time, but there's always been like that random guy. You're like, Harold Miner's in the dunk contest. And I get why at that time, if you were around at that time, you understood why. But looking back on it, that doesn't age very well, does it? It's just kind of is what it is at this point.
Clint Moses, Oregon State fan, go Beavers, made this point, and we got a break to come back with our guest. It's only good if they made the first dunk the only dunk. Not you get 5 misses.
Yeah, there's also that too. Like it takes away, you miss, you go back. There's some of that, and I don't even know what the exact rules are.
You just stop.
There's a lot of that. Yeah, time waste too.
All right. Yeah. When we come back, we'll hear from Dave Sopty-Mahler, KJR Radio in Seattle. His thoughts from there, the Pacific Northwest, on How much are they paying attention to the Pac-12, and what is on their radar? Huskies. This is 365 Sports. PettyClinicalOT.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be. They want to help you, but you have to contact them. Go to their website, PettyClinicalOT.com. Top left-hand corner, email, phone number. You can contact them either way. You can tell them I sent you. 1 out of every 3 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone. Maybe that is you. Maybe you're lucky, fortunate, and you're the 2/3 that don't have the issues. What are the issues of low testosterone? Sleep habits, energy, you're lethargic, you don't feel right, you don't sleep great. Just something's off. Your sex drive's not what it used to be. It's not even close. Maybe it's ED. All of that can come into play. PettyClinicalOT.com wants to help you with that. Go to their website, contact them. They'll set up an appointment for you to get your blood work. They'll get the lab results, and if your testosterone levels are low, put you in a program to increase your testosterone and get you back to what you want to be. Need to be, used to be. PettyClinicalOT.com.
Kick off 2023 with a bang at Allen Samuels in Waco. During the President's Day sales event, get a 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo with total values up to $2,000 and 1.9% for 72 months on second and third row options. That's right, 1.9% for 72 months plus rebates. Or how about the 2023 Jeep Gladiator Sport with up to $3,500 in total values plus an extra $500 to first responders at Allen Samuels in Waco.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
It takes time to reach goals. It's a truth that applies to more than sports. It goes for your financial goals as well. You work hard for your money, and you deserve an investment strategy that lines up with your game plan. And Chuck Verno, your Edward Jones financial advisor, can help. If financial investments aren't putting forth the effort you desire, stop by today for a financial review. Chuck Verno, 720 North 64th Street in Waco, 254-732-1161. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Chat room today. Thank you all for rolling through the early part and, of course, now the second hour of the show. It's President's Day, so a lot of people off today, maybe enjoying yourself. I know a bunch of my friends are playing golf. It's like 81 degrees in Waco today, and yet the wind is pretty close to 18 or 20 miles per hour, so that kind of is interesting to watch as well on how that maybe offsets that. King Williams 3D, Craig is cooking again. Vivid Psychosis, I see Nitro. Katie Rader, let's see. Soccer does just fine moolah-wise with little commercials. Never thought about that. I don't know
Money-wise?
Moolah, yeah, money, yeah.
I don't know. I haven't watched enough to compare, and I don't know how that all works out in the end. But, I mean, they might do just fine, but college football does far better than fine because of their commercials. Yeah. Like, that's the thing is you can do just fine. If the goal was just doing just fine, then, yeah, you could have 2-hour games and get, bang for your buck advertising-wise, but they want every penny, and therefore we have endless TV timeouts, it seems like. And I think, as much as there's the rule change talk, I think going back to the one point about, like, if you want to point at the biggest reason why, it is in fact the TV timeouts, and they're not going to do anything to eliminate that money train. So that's what we have, and that's what we're going to be stuck with as far as that one piece goes.
Well, what soccer does, especially the World Cup, is they sell 5 gigantic sponsors, knowing
like the Masters
that the game, like the game's not going to stop, right? So soccer doesn't stop.
It's a different type of stoppage. Yes.
So it's a different type of stoppage. So they're not going to stop. They have their halftime and their end of regulation and all that. So they sell big, massive sponsors, and they have things in the game
like
where
the Masters.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, we're joined by Dave Softy-Mahler, KJR Radio in Seattle, our go-to, and maybe our best friend that we love the most in the media. How about that opening?
Yeah, that's because I'm the only one that agrees to keep coming on your stupid show over and over again.
Why?
Everyone else says take a hike.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way,
yes,
let me ask you a question. So you mentioned the Masters there. You seem like Smokey, the kind of guy that's got some contacts at Augusta National Golf Club. Can you help me get Masters tickets?
Have you really never been to Augusta?
No, never.
Let's talk. I mean,
Done.
like, I don't have somebody inside of the Butler cabin, but I'm going to tell you how you can get there. And especially with your media outlet, that should not be as difficult, but I know it can be. But I can tell you how I've been able to go, and I've even broadcast, not from the grounds, but right outside the grounds. We'll talk, okay? All right?
No, for sure. And I actually know somebody who's a member there. His name is Bill Gates. I know him, but he doesn't know me.
Hey, by the way, one of our listeners, viewers, Chris Clark said, "My wife knows Softy from her days growing up in Seattle. Tell him that Jen Kramer said hello."
Oh yeah, I know Jen Kramer. Jennifer Kramer's father was a firefighter, and I remember the day I got my driver's license, I tried to give Jennifer Kramer a ride home, and her dad took one look at me and said, "No, you're not going home with that guy." So I've known Jennifer for a long, long time.
All right, so let's get, how much is the Pac-12's future? I know Seattle is a pro sports town, but I know Washington means a lot, the Huskies, and you're entrenched in that. How much of all of whatever is the future is on the radar up in Washington?
Well, it's huge, right? I mean, you got the Pac-12, first of all, trying to scramble to get a media rights deal. And we have no idea why that's taken so long. I mean, I got some kind of maybe hunches as to why it's taken so long, because I think the main reason is that the Pac-12 or Pac-10 remaining presidents and Commissioner Kleofkoff are pretty underwhelmed with what is out there financially. I think they thought they would get a lot more than what's been offered so far on the table. I saw where NBC is off the table, CBS is off the table. I think what they're trying to avoid, guys, is having to go almost exclusively full-time to streaming services like Amazon. And if they want the money they're looking for, they may not have any choice but to go out and do something like that. I mean, you guys know that's the wave of the future, right? It's streaming. But right now you got the NFL games on Thursday, and that's about it. So it would be kind of a pioneering deal if the Pac-12 became the first Power 5 conference to almost go exclusively on Amazon. But I think they're trying to stay away from that. But the problem is they've been a little bit underwhelmed financially with what's been offered, and I'm not surprised by that. You're talking about a conference that just lost Los Angeles, for crying out loud. I mean, what did they think? That they would lose USC and UCLA and the media right value would go up? That they'd make more money after losing Los Angeles? So this is what happens when you lose your marquee market, man. When you lose, two of your 3 or 4 biggest names in the conference, you got to settle for whatever table scraps are left over. And that's what George Kliavkoff and the other 10 remaining presidents are doing right now.
For Washington and Oregon in particular, the other 8 can maybe have a little bit different feelings, but the fact that they have been the driving forces even the last decade, where USC and UCLA didn't happen until this past year, where they looked like, they were going to help the conference look good on the field. But do they really feel like they should be committed to this for the long term? And does that kind of hurt things as well? Because, you could say like, yeah, for now we're cool, but I don't want to marry you forever.
No, I think schools like Washington and Oregon, they're not in it for the long haul at all unless they find a reason to be. And the reason to be would be a bigger share of the pie than the other remaining 8 schools in the conference. And I don't know if that's going to happen. I can tell you this right now, that Washington, if they were offered membership in the Big Ten, they would leave tomorrow. If Oregon was offered Big Ten membership, they would leave tomorrow. That's not on the table right now, though, for them. And I don't think it's going to be for a while. I mean, look, USC and UCLA right now in the Big Ten have a freaking monopoly over the West Coast. I mean, if you're growing up on the West Coast, you're playing high school football on the West Coast, and you want to play in a big-time Power 5 national champion Final Four contending year in and year out conference, you're going to play football in the Big Ten. You're going to play football for USC and UCLA. I mean, they've got much more cachet right now than the remaining 10 teams do in the conference. So if I'm USC and UCLA, I don't want UW and Oregon coming with me because I want the West Coast for myself.
Softy, do you think that there was obviously there was a better chance when Kevin Warr was in charge, but how close do you think that ever really got, all the scuttlebutt around Washington and Oregon and Big Ten?
I don't think it was very much, to be honest with you. I think it's just kind of a natural next step and an assumption that when USC and UCLA take off that there's more to come. And, I mean, look, UW and Oregon would be the next natural 2 to go. There's no question about that, unless they're talking about, going for the academics. And, Stanford, California would be schools that obviously would potentially be looked at to make a run in that regard. But I don't think that UW guys in Oregon really were even remotely considered much on the table when this first, go-round with expansion came on board between USC and UCLA for exactly what I just talked about. I think those guys wanted this move by themselves. And if you're USC, look, you know that UCLA is not really a great football school. They've had their basketball prowess, and USC has had their football prowess. But if you're USC, who are you really competing with on the West Coast for recruits when it comes to playing in the Big Ten? You're competing with nobody. I mean, you've got an absolute monopoly in your backyard on this thing if you're USC. So for them and UCLA, I think it's a total game changer. And then you start to think about the scheduling. I mean, you guys saw Ohio State bailed out of a home and home with UW in 24 and 25, and I think you'll see more of that happening, to be honest with you, in college football, and not just on the West Coast.
So do you then on the USC UCLA thing? They don't want Oregon and Washington in the Big Ten, right? They don't want them
I don't
anywhere.
think they do right now,
Yeah.
unless Dave, it gets to a point where the travel is just so ridiculous, where they just feel like, hey, we're putting too much of a stress on our kids. I mean, Dave, the nearest Big Ten city to L.A. is Lincoln, Nebraska, and it's 1,500 miles away. That's the shortest trip that USC and UCLA have right now in conference is 1,500 miles, okay? You're talking about a school that played California and Stanford and Oregon and Arizona and Arizona State. They were, 2-hour plane rides. Now you're talking about 1,500 miles to have to get halfway across the country. So if they wake up one day and they realize, hey, we can't do the charter thing because that's too expensive and nobody's stepping up to pay for that or sponsor that, we're putting too much stress on our kids. And it's not just football. We all sit around and focus on football, obviously, for obvious reasons. It's the moneymaker. But what about the other sports? What about the non-revenue sports having to fly 1,500 miles and 3,000 miles away to Rutgers and 2,000 miles away to Ann Arbor and Columbus, Ohio, and, Happy Valley, Pennsylvania is 2,000 miles away. So all of a sudden, man, this becomes a much bigger undertaking for the kids. There's no question about that.
So how do you feel that the teams like Washington, Oregon, or, even like for the Four Corner schools that might start feeling a little antsy, if this thing goes all streaming, and streaming right now, like you said, it's the wave of the future, but the Pac-12 doesn't need the wave of the future. They need the wave of now.
Right.
So if it goes all streaming, how do they feel like 5 years from now?
Yeah, I think the money at first is going to be lesser than what they're hoping for. The way they will spin it as their pioneers. That's the way they'll spin it, right? They'll spin it as, hey, this is where this is going. We're going to try to appeal to the youth out there, blah, blah, blah. I think that's nonsense. I think they would take the biggest deal they could find, and the best deal they could find might be on Amazon. It might be on Roku or Fubo or Hulu or whatever. You have all the younger generation that are going streaming, and then you have all the dinosaurs like Dave that can't even use their own cable remote, for crying out loud. Right?
You're right.
True.
You're right.
So we're trying to figure this out. It's just nuts how this whole thing has totally changed. People cutting the cord and going to all these different streaming sticks and boxes and services, and even satellite seems to be dead, for God's sakes. Everyone's going to the internet. So I don't know, guys. I just think you got a bunch of people and a bunch of presidents in this conference that have never really made sports or football a real priority. There's just not the passion here on the West Coast as there is in the Midwest and Texas and East, SEC and places like that. And people always ask for examples of what I'm talking about when I say that. Well, the best one I can give you is COVID, right? The SEC played right through COVID. They couldn't care less about COVID. They were willing to die to play football. And meantime, people on the West Coast were freaking out, locking themselves in their homes, going bananas, covering their faces with 6 different types of masks, not wanting to leave their house, not allowing people to watch the games in person. They played a stupid 4-game schedule that nobody cared about. Meantime, the rest of college football is just humming along like nothing happened. And the Pac-12 is the one that's, bending over and cowering to this virus. Which, again, this is not a commentary on COVID. This is just a commentary on reality. We know that happened. We know when COVID hit that the Pac-12 said, we're out. We're not going to be a part of this. And I think right then and there, the rest of the country kind of showed how much college football meant to them.
Well, you talked a second ago about them saying they'll be away with you. They tried to do that with the network before, right? And the Pac-12 network blew up in their face because they couldn't get DirecTV on board.
That's part of it. A big part of it was the distribution, no question. Most people did not even have the Pac-12 network. The programming was bad. They had Rick Neuheisel on there for a while. He quit, went to CBS, and they never replaced him. The whole thing is, if you've ever watched the Pac-12 network, and I don't know how much of that you guys watch down there, and if you are watching the Pac-12 network, I would ask, why are you watching the Pac-12 network? Maybe because the Big Ten network or the Big 12 network was down that day. That's why you watch the Pac-12. But the programming is horrible. It's just one big propaganda machine for the conference. It's just ridiculous, the stuff they put on there. I hate to use profanity, but it's just a bunch of ass kissers that just completely tell you what the conference wants you to hear. Like they're trying to hypnotize the audience, and people see right through that crap, man. So the programming was bad. The distribution was bad. The personalities were not very good. And it's kind of falling apart, I'm wondering if there's even going to be a Pac-12 network in the next 3 or 5 years.
Softy, how would people react? And I'm sure you've heard some reactions already just to the rumors, but if in fact San Diego State and SMU were to become new members of the Pac-12, what would be the reaction to that?
Yeah. Well, whatever, right? You're going from USC and UCLA to San Diego State and SMU, right? Think of the greatest steakhouse in Texas or the greatest steakhouse in Dallas or whatever, and then decide that you're going to go to an Arby's instead. That's what it is. That's what it is. No disrespect to San Diego State or SMU, but they're not UCLA and they're not USC, and they're never going to be USC or UCLA. And frankly, there's nothing they could do besides poaching another big-time school from another big-time conference to replace those schools. So I think the optics on the surface would look terrible of bringing on schools like that. I think the conference would be, looking more and more like the Mountain West or the WAC every single day if they brought on schools like that. I would almost rather just stay at 10, to be honest with you, than bring those schools on. I mean, what do you really get if you bring on SMU? I mean, you guys tell me. They're like, what, fifth fiddle in Dallas behind Texas, Texas Tech? I mean, even, Texas A&M. I mean, there's more Houston fans there than there are SMU. I mean, how big is SMU in Dallas?
I'd say Oklahoma's bigger than SMU in Dallas. Not even close.
I think it's Texas and Oklahoma. Tech. Baylor's got a nice contingent.
It's down there. Yeah, it's
Baylor?
down there.
Yeah.
I mean, guys, they're like sixth on the chart, right? I mean, it's ridiculous. Okay, so they have a big endowment, whatever. That's fine, but if you're going to get a kid from the Dallas, Texas area who's going to consider SMU, he probably would have jumped at the chance to go to Washington anyway over SMU or a place like Oregon, right? Or a place like Stanford. So I don't know how much you really bring on. I mean, the Dallas network, or the Dallas TV market, how many people are really watching SMU football in Dallas? That's like somebody saying, hey, let's bring on Seattle U to play basketball because they're in Seattle. Nobody watches Seattle U basketball in Seattle. Just because they're in Seattle doesn't mean they're watching. Just because they're in Dallas doesn't mean they're watching. So, I mean, I'm even more convinced now after hearing you guys talk about how kind of irrelevant they are.
Well, it's a great school, no question. And they were at least, if there would have been more additions in the Big 12, they were at least a possibility, but that didn't work out, and there's reasons for that as well.
Right. You know what I think of, by the way, Dave? When I think of SMU, I think of four words: death penalty and Eric Dickerson. That's what I think of.
Yeah, which now is legal.
Right.
They could have won with Craig James and Eric Dickerson now, and it would have been fair to do that. Is there any kind of from the University of Washington perspective, when they look at the Big 12, and the Big 12 set, they're fine, and we know about whatever may happen with the Pac-12, but is there any kind of looking down at anyone in the Big 12 if, in fact, that was the only life raft left?
I mean, maybe a little bit. I mean, I don't know. I mean, now that Texas and Oklahoma are taking off, the Big 12 obviously is not what they used to be. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that, right? I mean, no. you got Oklahoma State, you got Baylor, you got Texas Tech, you got some good basketball schools lately. I mean, Texas Tech and Baylor have been to two of the last three Final Fours and
Kansas
won a championship, right? Yeah. So there's some tradition there, but I think it'd be different if it was Texas and Oklahoma, Washington and Oregon. To me, that's a totally different deal than it is with those two teams going to the SEC. So I don't know. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of trial and error. I think a lot of people want to know, and I get it. What does this look like? Will it work? I mean, who has any idea, right? Who has any idea if Texas and Oklahoma in a decade from now are going to regret going to the SEC and having to deal with, Alabama and Georgia and Florida and Tennessee and schools like that? Are we talking about just, two big, gigantic super conferences that, if they're lucky, they play each other in the non-conference, and that's it? I mean, if you're a school like Ohio State, and look, I'm bummed out that Ohio State dropped that scheduled series with UW in 24 and 25, but I get it. I mean, they've got USC, they've got Michigan, they've got Penn State, they've got Wisconsin, they've got Nebraska hopefully turning things around in Lincoln, schools like that. They got plenty of Washingtons, if you will, on their conference schedule. They don't need them in September. SEC has plenty of great schools in the conference schedule. Do they really need to be risking their resume and, play a team like Oregon or UW or even Michigan or Ohio State and risk a loss? So I'm just concerned that these great non-conference games that we've come to love in September are going to eventually go away. Wait until you see who Ohio State replaces UW with, and then give me a call.
Yeah. Softy, throughout the chat room, on our 365 Sports chat room, you've just basically forced yourself to join us every week because everybody, every single person, if they'd never heard you before, you're now locked in. So deal with it. You're in.
The check's in the mail, right?
Yeah, and the check's in the mail, and yeah. Hey, one thing I learned today. Why the hell have we not had you on more recently? But I was curious. I'm thinking, we've looked at other options of the Pac-12. We've looked at other schools and what they think, the Four Corners, whoever. Hadn't had you on about this, and glad we did. It's been a great segment. We love the Truth Serum.
Yeah, all right, boys. Appreciate it, and we'll do it again very soon. And it's going to be interesting to see how this whole thing plays out. But I got to get you guys up on the air in Seattle because this SMU thing is, I don't know, man. It just rubs me the wrong way. I'm sure they're great people. I'm sure they're really cool, alumni and students, and they root for their team. But I don't know. It just doesn't do much for me. But you know what? At my age, it doesn't take a lot.
By the way, I had 15 SMU alums say they were going to call you about Augusta National. And,
there you go. Give them my email. Give them my email.
No, they don't want to talk.
KJR. Softy, SOFTY, KJR @gmail.com. Hell, you know what, Smokey? I don't even give a damn. If it means getting onto Augusta, you can give out my freaking phone number. Go for it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate your time.
All right, guys, see ya.
That's Dave Softy Mahler. We got to know him. 2011 RG3 Heisman Trophy year. Baylor had that offense from like crazy good. Played Washington.
The one you see all across the SEC
66,
now.
59, whatever that was. Terrence Ganaway went nuts at running back. RG3 was good, but my God, after the game was over in the press conference, Softy's in there, and it's Washington's
it's Sark.
It's Sark.
Yeah.
It is Sark, and he starts blasting away at the defensive coordinator. Is he going to come back? Is he being retained? Is it, he's just, and I saw Roger the Dodger, who's a big, huge Pac-12 fan. We get it. He goes, Softy just does, he just wants to be liked. That's the last thing he cares about.
No,
it really is.
Believe me. In that press conference, he straight up, first question out of the box. I mean, the period on the opening statement of our defense didn't play well and, couldn't be more proud of the offense, but this was that kind of game, blah, 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 out of Sark's mouth. Then Softy said, do you have to consider making a change at defensive coordinator? Because it was not the first time that Washington had been in a game like that year where, if you make some more stops, you win the game going away. And Sark goes, real classy, Softy, real class move.
Yeah,
class move. Yeah. And then it kind of
the whole
degraded from there.
It went down in a hurry.
He had to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think, he's in Pac-12 territory. Softy's not the type of guy to just, I'm on Big 12 radio, I need to say things they're going to like. He's not like that at all. And so that's not what he's worried about. I just think, I'm not out there, but he basically had the response that I would have expected because, it's one thing on Twitter and on YouTube and places where we talk a lot of college football, as if you're a Pac-12 fan, say like, yeah, I'm all for whatever, just like a bunch of Big 12 fans who probably wouldn't have otherwise been like, yeah, Cincinnati, awesome, great, BYU's tremendous, bring them on. You say what you do to survive, basically. And so I'm sure there are a lot of Pac-12 fans that have convinced themselves like, no, SMU would be incredible, and this is why, and all of that. But I think there's just as many, if not more, people like Softy that are like, yeah, I just don't really care. Like, I don't care about going to Dallas every other year, like to play at Highland Park. I just don't care. Because that's just, I just think that's natural. I think that's the natural response when, like he said, it's one thing if there was a merger and it's Oklahoma, Texas, Washington, Oregon are like your headliners. That is one thing. But Washington, Oregon is joining the rest of the Big 12, or it was Oklahoma, Texas, and it was everybody, but it wasn't USC or UCLA or Washington or Oregon. It was just the other remaining schools. I think either way you look at that, it'd be a little bit deflating than disappointing. Absolutely.
I agree. My favorite Softy story before you go to break is...
Yeah, because we have a guest here.
We had, when Smokey and Butch and I were doing the show together, we had Softy on. It was the first time that he was on with the three of us. And Butch, for those of you who don't know, our late former co-host is the greatest guy in the world, but he had a thick Texas accent, like Walter Brennan in a Western kind of accent, which is so thick. And he's like, Softy, tell me this about UW right now. And Softy, before Butch can even get a question, goes, am I on a prank show right now? Like, are you kidding me? Like, he thought we were doing a bit, and he's like, no, that's how he talks. Softy, we hear it every day. He didn't believe it the whole time. He kept coming back like, okay, have the old guy talk again. And he's like, no, that's him.
No, that's straight Waco right there, buddy.
No, he is. I know, Roger Dodger, we love you. We really do. You've been a part of it, and I know you're a Pac-12 guy. And by the way, so is he. He's only being honest about his perspective, and that's why I did not know completely where he stood. We never even talked about it. I said, hey, can you feel like you could come on and give us an idea? What is the train of thought there in Seattle with the University of Washington? And we're glad we had him on, and we've had everybody else when we can, whenever anyone's been available to discuss the Pac-12 or other things moving forward. San Diego State, AP writer, in fact, Bernie Wilson covers San Diego. What are the Aztecs thinking? They're quiet right now, as there's at least a speculation they could be a part of the Pac-12, and that's next on 365 Sports.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street in Waco, a hidden gem. Look, if you were looking for the best in local craft whiskeys, there's really no better place. Garrison Brothers, Balcones, Devil's River, TX, you name it. If it's made in Texas, they've got it. They're Riverbend Liquor and Wine. If you want to talk about the craft beers, and when I was in there a couple weeks ago, yeah, those winter beers, there's still a couple like stragglers in there kind of hanging around. But it's time for the springtime ales, and those springtime brews are rolling through right now. So, again, if you're ready to switch up your roster, the springtime stuff's coming out now. They've got it there at Riverbend Liquor and Wine. Great promotions. You can follow that on Instagram. They always have different new varieties of every kind of wine, spirit, beer that you could possibly imagine. And they've got great customer service, and that drive-through window does not take long. I once pulled up to the drive-through window because it was very cold outside and it was raining, and I said, I'm just going to go to the drive-through. I pulled up. There were 6 cars in the drive-through. I was done in 11 total minutes. So it was about 2 minutes per car that they took through the line. I would have been in the store for 20 had I walked in. So think about that when you're going to a place to get what you need. And look, if it's cold and rainy, you don't want to go out, guess what? They're available on DoorDash. They'll get it to you that way. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, behind the bank.
The future's bright. The time is now.
College is what you make it. It's a late-night pizza run and all-nighters coding a new project. It's having big dreams and making them a reality. It's a professor who knows your name and your story. It's preparation for your future, your calling, your life. And at Baylor, it's even more. Baylor, where lights shine bright.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old, and they come every 6 months, and it's a happy experience. It's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma. And they have to come here. They're used to lights. They're used to water in their mouth. They're used to experience. They already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Boots add protection. Good boots help you climb better and move forward faster. And when your son or daughter steps into the boots of a U.S. Army officer, they also learn how to lead. In these boots, they'll gain more confidence with expert training in one of more than 150 occupational specialties. In these boots, they'll stand a little taller and lead a team with diverse backgrounds and areas of expertise to successfully accomplish whatever challenge comes next. In these boots, they'll earn respect with valuable experience from day one that will give them solid footing for success into the future. Highly qualified candidates who earn a spot on our team can receive comprehensive health care coverage, college tuition assistance, and a bonus of up to $40,000. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543. one-size-fits-all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses. When it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Bernie Wilson, Associated Press, covering the San Diego area, but much more than that, joins us on 365 Sports with Paul, Craig, and I'm David Smoak. Bernie, thank you very much for your time. One of the first things, I looked at your feed, and I saw where you said you enjoyed Diet Coke venues. We love you for that, because we love when there are Diet or Coca-Cola venues, not Pepsi.
Awesome. So does that make me an honorary Smoak?
Yes.
Okay.
That's exactly
Okay.
right. That's exactly right. All right,
Okay.
so let's where is the radar, the interest with what's happening with whatever is going to happen with the Pac-12 and what appears to be the simmering and maybe the legitimate interest with San Diego State?
Well, I mean, it's San Diego State fans for years have wanted in the Pac-12 for obvious reasons, because the Mountain West is less than enthralling on many levels. In fact, you know why they named it the Mountain West Conference, guys?
No, sir.
Because Little League was already taken. But they've played in the shadow of UCLA and USC for decades, and they've wanted to be part of the club, and now it looks like they're going to get their wish. The only thing is, and for full disclosure, I have Pac-12 roots. My wife went to USC. Our youngest son went to UCLA. The Pac-12 is losing its 2 marquee members. They will definitely step up, though, in the world into a Power 5 conference instead of, the little Group of 5 conference, the Mountain West, which is just, it's just an uninteresting conference in many ways. So it sounds like they're going to get into the Pac-12, that it's just a matter of time. And obviously, the Pac-12 has to go through its thing. I'm guessing the presidents have to approve it, and then the SDSU will have to be invited and fill out an application with 3 references and et cetera, submit that, and no doubt they'll be approved, because from the minute SC and UCLA announced their making, which I personally I think is a really stupid move to the Big Ten. The Pac-12 can't just abandon the Southern California market. Not that SDSU has anywhere near the name recognition of SC or UCLA, but it plays in San Diego. It draws not a lot of interest from LA, but it draws LA high school players. So San Diego State absolutely, is a natural for the Pac-12. Who the dancing partner is, SMU, is one, and that's why I'm guessing you guys are asking this, right? It sounds like it could be an SMU San Diego State thing. There's also been talk maybe San Diego State to the Big 12, but the Pac-12 makes more sense. So I think most fans are waiting out here with bated breath to see if it actually finally really happens.
What if they join the Pac-12 and then 5 to 10 years from now, that conference isn't what they joined?
That could very well be. I love banter with. There's some special SDSU alums I have banter with on Twitter all the time, because they know my Pac-12 affiliation, and they think SC is afraid to play him in football, and that UCLA doesn't want to play him in basketball. And so I like to joke that the 2029 Pac-12 football championship game will be between San Diego State and Portland State. And, that could happen. I mean, it's, that's the thing is like, yeah, they might be a Pac-12 team, but who knows what that conference looks like? Because again, losing, the luster, even in a down year, USC football is far more interesting than say Wyoming football, and that's just a reality. And UCLA hoops is back in approaching not quite the wooden glory years, but they're pretty good. And once everything shakes out, there's still no certainty that Oregon and Washington are going to stay. There's still talk that what do they call it? The Four Corners schools, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado could bail either as a package deal somewhere or piecemeal to the Pac or the Big 12 or somewhere else. So by the time it's done, that's a great question. Who knows what the Pac-12 is going to look like? It'll still have Stanford, Cal, probably Oregon State, Wazoo, but it's not real appetizing. But compared to what San Diego State has been playing against for the last couple of decades, last many decades, it would still be a step up in the world, and the whole Power 5 thing as opposed to the Group of 5 thing.
Bernie, how would you describe the passion and the interest of San Diego State fans as far as if they do make this move to the Pac-12? How much of an audience do you feel like that brings? And I know, Snapdragon Stadium, heard a lot of talk about how nice of a venue that is. Where is San Diego State as kind of a part B to that in terms of their readiness level of if, hey, this invite comes and it looks like it's absolutely going to be coming their way, are they ready to go ahead and make that leap right away, in terms of making that transition?
I think they are in basketball. Football, still quite a ways away. I mean, yes, they have a new stadium, and it's unfortunate they built it so small. It's 35,000 seats, which would make it the nicest stadium in the Big Sky Conference. I'm a proud Idaho Vandal, and the Big Sky Conference would love to have a Snapdragon Stadium. But you lose an NFL team, and they figured that 35,000 was appropriate for their program. I can't see a lot of teams being super excited to come here and play in a 35,000 seat stadium. Although Wazoo Stadium's about the same size, but it's clearly a basketball school at the moment, and it has been since Steve Fisher was hired there 23 years ago, and he's retired now. But Brian Dutcher, his longtime right-hand man, has pretty much kept the pace, and they're back in the top 25. And I think anybody who has half a brain cell left would say that an invitation to the big dance is far more important than an invitation to the Arizona Bowl or the Copper Bowl or, whatever, the Fruit and Nut Bowl up in Northern California. So it's football, still has a ways to go. Basketball, they beat UCLA during the COVID season down here when there weren't any fans. They've beaten UCLA, USC, not in its current lineup though. I think they beat Stanford earlier this year, but football team has beaten some of the low-hanging fruit in the Pac-12, but I don't think the football team has a hard time hanging currently with some of the Mountain West teams. So basketball, yes, I think they could march right in, and they'd probably get whacked around a little bit, but they would also beat some teams. Football has a ways to go.
Well, number 22 and number 20 in the latest poll, San Diego State obviously has done well with St. Mary's and Gonzaga and all that's going on out in that area for schools not a part of the Pac-12. Bernie, when the USC-UCLA story hit, where was that on the scale of interest in San Diego and, in your opinion, even in the L.A. market? Because we had those even that day, in the next few days, who said it wasn't even a blip on any local radio because it's such a pro-sports town.
That L.A. is such a pro-sports town, you mean?
Yeah. Yeah,
I think they're probably right. I mean, down here it was huge news because long-suffering San Diego State fans saw that as a way for them to finally get into the conference. There's no love lost between San Diego and LA. I've lived in both cities. The LA sports market is fabulous. I mean, there are, 10 or 12 10 professional teams, 2 Pac-12 schools, unbelievable. It's just hard to live there. San Diego, great place to live. And until the Padres have turned it on recently, just an abjectly awful sports town. I mean, San Diego's lost 2 NBA teams, lost an NFL team. The Padres have been awful for the better part of 2 decades until recently. So down here it was huge news because, again, SDSU fans finally saw it as their easy way into the Pac-12 because there's been this belief over the years that USC has had some influence in trying to keep the SDSU out of the Pac-12. UCLA not so much because UCLA is a public school. USC is private. It can do what it wants. Who knows if any of that's true. So, yeah, it was big news down here. And I'm sure that SC and UCLA fans and alums up in L.A. probably, I don't know how they reacted. I would have rolled my eyes because, it's just so unnatural for 2 L.A. teams to be bailing for the Big Ten other than for money reasons. I mean, but yeah, down here it was huge because people finally saw this as probably the path of least resistance to finally get into the Pac-12, regardless of what the ultimate Pac-12 lineup is going to look like.
Is there any concern that they'll be treated like a little brother for a while in the Pac-12, or does that not matter?
Oh, I'm sure it is. Well, not necessarily a concern. The one thing about Twitter, it's an awful time suck, but there is some funny smack talk going on. And the other day, some Utah fans were, yakking at SDSU fans, and they were yakking back. But, SDSU beat Utah, 2 seasons ago in triple overtime up at the soccer stadium in Carson where they had to play while Snapdragon was being built because they tore Qualcomm down. And then I think the return trip, they got smoked pretty badly by Utah. But they will be viewed as the little sister, but they are capable of every once in a while slapping back and reminding people that, hey, we're not terrible. But the football team in particular has got to get its act together. It's just, they can't keep a quarterback. They have no identity. They're awfully boring to watch. Although their new offensive coordinator, Ryan Lindley, great guy, local guy, he gives them a little bit of hope. But yeah, they'll be the little sister. But again, the hoops team, I do believe, can come in and at least hold its own. So it'll be interesting. And, but again, nobody says no to a trip to San Diego any time of the year. So, fans from the Northwest or wherever are probably going to, eventually see that, hey, this probably is not a bad thing for the Pac-12 or the Pac-10 or the Pac whatever it's going to be.
When San Diego State was even mentioned back when the Big 12 was trying to respond to Texas and Oklahoma, although we never thought that it was going to get to that point, we selfishly were hoping to God it happened because we love – I miss San Diego being in the rotation, Bernie. I know Qualcomm, Jack Murphy Stadium, all that's out. I loved San Diego. I loved to be there. It's a phenomenal city. And I hate that it's kind of just fallen off the radar, obviously, because the Chargers are now in L.A.
Yeah, exactly. And that cost them a chance at a true world-class stadium. I mean, again, Snapdragon's nice, but it's 35,000 seats. And they sold the bill of goods, well, we can expand it to 55,000 and get an NFL team. It's like, no, that's not how NFL teams operate. But yeah, it's a great city, and again, if not for the Padres, it would be just the absolute worst sports city in the world. So it now rests on SDSU to get into, and even if it was the Big 12, it's not the natural or the closeness of rivalries on the West Coast. But the Big 12 wouldn't be bad either. But it does seem to make sense that it's going to be the Pac-12, and that should elevate San Diego's stature in the sports world.
Bernie, thank you very much. You Darvish, a couple of San Diego notes, if you don't mind. You Darvish.
No, not at all.
Redone. Don Coryell to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'm thrilled with that. Joe Gibbs, of course, had connection. I love the Washington Redskins, now the Commanders, when Gibbs was there, still do. But Don Coryell, to me, was always one of those that didn't get enough credit for how forward-thinking he was with the passing game and the intricacies of what they did with the Chargers.
Yeah, it's nice that he's finally getting in. It's just sad that it's, long overdue, and he died 13 years ago. Just a real quick story at his memorial service, which was so big that it was held at FDSU's basketball arena. John Madden spoke. He was a Coryell disciple, or whatever you want to say. Came from the Coryell tree. Madden made the comment that he was sitting down front with Joe Gibbs and Dan Fouts, and all three of those guys were in the Hall of Fame because of Coryell, who wasn't in the Hall of Fame. So, he's finally getting his due. It's just long overdue.
Thanks for your time, Bernie. We appreciate you very much for the insight and knowledge.
Anytime, guys, and keep that Diet Coke flowing.
Yes, sir. Bernie Wilson, Associated Press. And there you go with San Diego State. Feels like that is more imminent. That wasn't the word. Very much a matter of time on the Pac-12.
See Jason Shears tweet about this? Was it yesterday? Said that there was an event and San Diego State president said, yeah, we're going to the Pac-12. It's pretty much a foregone conclusion. So, I guess they're just ironing out the details. But I saw that actually earlier today. I didn't spend much time on Twitter over the weekend, but let's see when that was from. Okay, might have to scroll a bit. He's tweeted a little bit. So, but yeah, I saw that. Like I guess it was yesterday at some point that he said that the San Diego State guy, I don't know if it was the president or whoever, I think it might have been the president, said at an event we're headed to the Pac-12. So it's unofficially official, and I guess they're probably waiting on a TV deal to I don't know what their order of plans are with how they want to do everything, but I think it seems like it's a pretty foregone conclusion that they're expanding, and I have never been on board with the idea, and I think we've laid it out multiple times that we were, or at least I didn't think that this whole idea of the merging was going to happen. Right. I didn't ever really buy strongly into that. I know there's been this big turf war as far as Big 12 and Pac-12 fans, going at each other and whatnot, media members and all of that, but I just felt like it's not going to happen that way. They're not going to die even if they don't expand. I don't think it anyways. I think they'd stay pat at 10 and they just wouldn't make as much money. That simple as that. And I thought that was more logical than them joining up with the Big 12 in any way, shape, or form. But, you leave all the possibilities out there. And then when the San Diego State SMU stuff came up, I did feel like, okay, well, that's what they'll do. And I don't think there's enough want to go and let's merge ourselves into the Big 12 if we're Oregon, Washington, Four Corner Schools, whoever, or it's going completely kaput. Those are the extreme reactions, and I think it is going to be somewhere in the middle of they add San Diego State and SMU, they get whatever TV deal they get, and that's how it settles it now for at least a little while until the next big movement, whatever that might be.
Yeah, I think, and I said this last week, I think they'll be around for the next wave of this. We'll get to the 12-team playoff. We'll see who gets antsy. We'll see, because the Pac-12 could decide we're going to break up right now, and then what if they just decided on their own? With no one like the Big 12 or the Big 10, it was just we don't like each other anymore and we're going to leave. Well, it's not like you can just walk up to the Big 10 and go, hey, we're here now, and they'll be like, so? I mean,
yeah, you could find 10 teams becoming very quickly independent.
Exactly. So then you're in that spot of we've got to be major independents. And look, I don't think that 20 years from now that's not what Stanford will be, because I think that Stanford and maybe even Cal in particular are different kind of institutions that just won't care about all this stuff as much as everyone else does. I don't think that's a bad thing.
I don't know if that's always. I know that seems like at times that could be because of what it seems like are the priorities, which are really the priorities of all academic institutions. You would think, even those who are known to be mouth breathers and football's everything. I get that, but I don't know what their goals are. Who they are now, but as far as athletically, I think it's maybe more than we think. It's just they're real quiet about it.
Well, I don't say what they The other thing is it's changed to the point of, for a school like Stanford in particular, Stanford can't just go into the transfer portal and say, here's the best wide receiver, we'll take him.
No.
That guy has to meet their academic standard. They cannot. So since they can't do that, then NIL, while they would have this gigantic endowment, and I'm sure they've got some football crazy, tech billionaire Silicon Valley dude that'd be more than happy to shell out money to get guys, but the guys still have to go to Stanford. They have to be able to get through it. So you can't just do what, even really elite state schools do because you are Stanford. So that's the point.
You're talking about the admission of these whoever
exactly.
transfer.
I
still think that there was a time, and recently, and Texas has won the last two all-around athletic departments. And, I mean, they're really good across the board in many, many things. Just watch. But I always thought Stanford could be independent. One, they have all the money they would ever need. The endowment is huge, so if they needed to support that in any particular way, which is kind of what they do anyway, and I'm not going to get into knowing about the intricacies of Stanford, but they kind of seem to me like they could have been an independent because they have so many sports. It's not as if they're bringing in a lot of money because they're a part of the Pac-12. One of the reasons the Pac-12 is who it is, for years, yeah, USC, UCLA, I get that, Oregon, Washington, but Stanford was a major part of their success.
Yeah.
And they've just kind of disappeared.
Stanford was winning the football up until just a couple of years ago.
That's what I'm saying.
Because
That's
David
why
Shaw lost his touch.
Yep.
But, I mean, I don't know about them and what their desires are moving forward. And you know what? It might not even matter because they're prestigious enough that if there is some future NFL league or college football NFL league, they're still – apathy or not, a much safer bet to get into that thing than a bunch of the schools who think that they probably have a better chance because they're not as serious about academics. And it won't be because of necessarily just academics, but I think that those are brands. I do think there's a question to be had about just the passion level, and certainly there is a large difference between a lot of the West Coast schools and then those in the Midwest and South. By the way, North Carolina is the top team in the fall Learfield Cup standings. They're Stanford, BYU, Ohio State, Syracuse. That's the top five.
You got a lot of what Texas does though with the golf and tennis. Of course, a lot of them. Yeah, they'll. That is interesting, with a long way to go in the spring semester.
Yeah, I mean, that's just where it is.
But North Carolina's in that conversation every year. Yeah,
but that's just where it is right now. And so, yeah, I mean, I think anything's possible. I don't feel like the California schools are just they're on the verge of packing up their bags and ready to call it quits by any means. Sometimes it's portrayed that way. I think they're going to stay pat. Now, by the way, I went to follow up and I found that tweet referencing what was apparently the San Diego State AD saying that it's some private event behind closed doors, and I haven't seen any follow-up on that. So take that for whatever you want to take that as. That's.
I should have. I would have known that. We could have asked.
I mean, maybe it was said, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. Jason Scheer had that out there, and I believe what he has to say. So I just haven't seen any follow-up beyond that. So take that, again, however you like that comment that apparently was made. But I mean, I think even if it wasn't made, that's a whole other thing. But even if it was, I still feel like it's inevitable that that's the direction we're going. Is San Diego State and SMU joining the Pac-12? I just think it's a matter of when, not if. And if that were to get derailed somehow, I just wonder what that could possibly be because I don't see what really other options they have. If, in fact, they were told, hey, your TV deal is this, and we need you to get more inventory, and that's what they have to go and do is get more inventory, and it's still sitting here with no TV deal, like I'm just ready to see what this thing looks like. I just can't wait to see what this looks like because that will determine as much, if anything, of what the future looks like. We're talking about, well, how do Oregon and we don't even know what money they're making yet. Let's ask how Oregon and Washington are feeling if all of a sudden they're getting like $25 million a year versus expectations. Then we start getting real serious about who's got some cold feet about the future and who's like starting to make some phone calls of like, okay, this is not going to work for us.
By the way, Pete Thamel, ESPN.com. It's a part of the ESPN, I think, Insider, if you're a member. Realignment chatter, how the Pac-12 holds the key to it all. It's not like they're in a power position, but yes, whatever happens with them leads to whatever domino effects there might be coming down the road. There was somebody on my direct message on Twitter asked when we were doing the top four seeds, Paul, the number 1 through 4, how many quadrant 1 wins did KU have? They're 13-5 against quad 1. Nobody else has more than 9. Purdue, Texas, Baylor, and Iowa State. 3 more Big 12 teams have 8 quad wins. Arizona basketball school deluxe is 7-2. So that someone asked that number. In fact, Kansas is 13-5. I think that's all their losses. They're unbeaten against everybody else, which most of these teams are. Texas, Baylor, Purdue, etc. against the quads 2, 3, and 4. When we come back, Ashley Hodge. What in the hell happened Saturday afternoon, second half against Kansas in Lawrence? And how does Baylor men's basketball bounce back from that? That's next on 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Right now, the President's Day sales event continues, and of course, today, President's Day. Get a 2022 Ram 1500 Quad Cab with 0% for 72 months, or Ram 1500 Crew Cab with 1.9% for 72 months on most of the trim levels. The Lone Stars and the Laramies, the top-of-the-line Longhorn and Longhorn Limiteds, and you could also get 1500 Lone Star Crew Cab, the Ram 1500 Lone Star Crew Cab with values up to $8,250 plus an extra $500 in first responders. Hurry in. Right now, the President Day sales event continues. Also right now, the 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo with total values of $2,000 and 1.9% financing for 72 months on second and third row options. Alan Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, General Manager Ted Teague, they are absolutely entrenched in so many events, charities, and helping the community in the city of Waco at Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Baylor Scott & White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, hand or wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trusts. Baylor Scott & White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
In the market for a quality metal building? Since 1943, Pioneer Steel & Pipe has helped Central Texas residential and commercial customers with metal building design, panel options, building components, and trim options. Pioneer Steel & Pipe's residential line is energy efficient, offers low maintenance, reduces insurance payments, is impact resistant, and carries up to a 45-year limited warranty. In addition, they can also help you find a metal building contractor for your project. Pioneer Steel & Pipe with locations in Waco and Bryan and at pioneersboys.com.
What are you waiting for? Next year's New Year's resolution to lose weight, get fit, start working out? 3, 2, 1, go to Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness. If you really want to get in shape, get rid of weight or inches, you have to make a commitment to work out. End the excuses of not enough time, you're too tired or too busy. There's a special place that will change your life at Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco. And they have a commitment to you too. With personal trainers Christy London, Randall Corley, and Alex Bosch. State-of-the-art Cybex equipment, new weights and spin bikes, clean and spacious locker rooms, each with a whirlpool and sauna, and a staff that will know your name when you walk through the front door. Elite tennis facilities and a great tennis pro in Britt Coleman. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness is a place you can call home, a place you can work out on your own or with 40-plus group exercise classes. It's time for you to get in shape, lose inches, get fit at Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lake Shore Drive in Waco.
Hi, Hi, this is Paul Catalina. I recently got engaged to the love of my life, but the most important thing that I had to do before I popped the question was get that perfect ring. And I know nothing about rings. So I went to the wedding ring store, Boozer's Jewelers on Valley Mills Drive. I knew I needed a custom design, and that's exactly what they do. 9 out of 10 of their engagement rings are designed in-house. The entire process took less than a month, and they were great every step of the way. Great options on financing, excellent selection, and talented designers. My fiance and I get nonstop compliments on the ring. I only deserve credit for doing the smartest thing I could, walking into Boozer's and letting them work their magic. Your one-of-a-kind fiance deserves a one-of-a-kind ring, and that's what you get at Boozer's. Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store on Valley Mills Drive.
This is 365 Sports. Are you a Sikkim 365 super fan? Then try out our premium subscriptions at Sikkim365.com.
Here we go with this 5 o'clock hour. Garrett, before we get to our esteemed guest, will you look at the wide shot of the set? Can you get us a wide shot of the set? So this is the kind of people I work with. Yeah, I mean, seriously, like, this is the kind of people, right? Everyone knows what I think of these things, and I hate you.
Well, here's the funny part about it. I have maybe tricked you into taking it with you.
I think I'm going to. And so then I'm going to lay it down somewhere. Like, it might even, like, lay it in a box, and I'm going to look at it. One day I'm going to go open the box up, and I'm just going to, bam, right there.
Yeah.
It's going to be a disaster. Is this venomous?
I don't know. It's rubber. That's all that I know about it.
All right.
It's not going to hurt you unless you choke on it.
Ashley Hodge, one of the great partners of 365 Sports and Sikkim365.com, college basketball analyst. Ashley, I'm going to make it blunt. What in the hell happened Saturday, and can Baylor recover?
Boy, it was a shock, just because they had been playing so well, and that second half was something else. Kendall Count and I do a podcast together, and he pointed out that Baylor gave up 1.72 points per possession in the second half, which he said was equivalent to intentionally fouling an 86% free throw shooter every single time down court. So that just kind of shows how terrible that run was, that Kansas ends up scoring 34 points in the first 10 minutes of the second half. And you just can't play defense like that. I am optimistic they're going to right the ship. I don't think they're going to be a great defensive team this year, but they can certainly be better than what they showed on Saturday. And I think we'll get more of an inspired effort like we saw after the Marquette game. And they played pretty good defense against Gonzaga a few days later, and I'm expecting that against Kansas State tomorrow night.
Ashley, if you really go back and think about that game, because they were shooting so well in the first half, it masked a lot of what was going on, really, right? They only had one turnover the entire game, and it was very, very early on. So they were not playing good defense in the first half either. Kansas just wasn't making shots. And then when that flipped, it kind of exposed what was really going on in that first half.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the one. I think Kansas ended up with 4 turnovers on the day, but that's pathetic. I mean, you have to force more turnovers than that, especially in a game that could be for the Big 12 championship. You just have to play with more aggression and intention. I will say that there's a little bit of conspiracy theorist in me, I have to admit, and I do think there were some early cheap fouls on Baylor. And that sets the tone. It lets their, Flo Thamba and Jonathan Chalmers-Chatchwell know that you have to be really careful, or we're going to call, cheap fouls on you. So I think that maybe led to a lack of aggression, but still no excuse. You have 20 fouls to use at that center position if you include Flo, Jonathan, Josh, and Caleb. So I think that, the fact that maybe they became passive is on them versus the officials. But yeah, I mean, you hope that going forward there's going to be a lot more aggression, and even if it means more fouls and sending the other team to the foul line more, you just have to have that, down the stretch. The competitive will wasn't there in the second half, and that's not Baylor basketball as we know it, and certainly not what we've come to expect the last 4 years.
Scott Drew can make anything look good, smell good, feel good, even in the worst of times. Did he do that Saturday evening in any way?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing that the players, the film watch was brutal, the second half especially, and I've heard they've responded really well, and I think there's a lot of accountability going on and not a lot of finger pointing, and I think there's a big buy-in from the team, and they're embarrassed, and I don't expect you'll see anything close to that from a repeat performance. If they play like they're capable of offensively, what they've shown in the last month or so, and if they can, play much more inspired defense, it's effort, it's will, it's making sure you take pride in keeping your man from getting to the rim. It's giving hard fouls at the rim, not trying to hurt somebody, but certainly sending a message that we're not going to give you a cheap layup, and maybe they think they think twice about getting all the way to the rim if you do that. I mean, it's kind of old school mentality, but I think that's what Baylor needs.
Do you think, because there were one after another uncontested layups and dunks in that second half, it was
right.
hard to watch.
With John back now, I mean, and he's obviously been more of an offensive force than the defensive force you kind of expect, and that's because he's got to get stronger laterally and more confident and all that. Do you think that we will eventually see, and it could be late in March, some of that defensive ability come back to him, because that's what his real natural gift is in this game?
Yeah, I do. I think he's going to get better defensively. I think that I think that our players understand that. I heard a former player told them before a game, says you have a Final Four offense, but you got a first round exit defense. And the team knows all this. I mean, they just have to realize that there's no room for error going forward. I mean, they put themselves in a position now where to win the Big 12, they absolutely have to win the next four, and they also need some help. They're going to need Kansas to lose either tonight against TCU or against Texas, and they'll also need Texas to trip up in another game, because both those teams are one game ahead of them in the win and loss column. I think those are all possible things because everybody's still playing each other. But Kansas isn't going to lose at home to West Virginia and Texas Tech. Let's be real. So I mean, they may lose one of the two to TCU and Texas. So if you want to win the Big 12, if you're Baylor, you have to win the next four, and that obviously starts with a really difficult place to win, and that's Manhattan, Kansas, as well as Coach Tang has been playing this year, but they have been beaten there. Texas beat them, and so Baylor hopes to avoid the sweep and return the favor for what they did in Waco.
Ashley, you followed the program as closely as anybody, and there was a off season of extreme buzz, and here they are. They're just a game back of the Big 12 and the best league in America. But what's been better, maybe what's been worse versus your expectations heading into this season now that we're starting to get closer to March?
I knew the offense would be good, but, I mean, they're number two in offensive efficiency right now, neck and neck with Gonzaga. But I do think, just based on who they play, I think they have the best offense in the country. I think they've proven that in a lot of games against high-level competition. But the defense is not nearly as good as I thought it would be. I expected Keontae George to have his struggles defensively. I knew that, Adam Flagler and LJ Cryer are a little bit undersized, although I do think they give effort on the defensive end. I knew Jalen Bridges would be a good defender. But I'm just disappointed overall that the defense isn't better. I think that we've had too many lapses, obviously Marquette and early on in conference play, and certainly, the second half against Kansas. Looked like we were turning a corner until that, but that was a pretty bad half of basketball. I mean, it's Kansas. It's, it can snowball. They're in transition. They're a great team. So, maybe it's an anomaly. We'll see the next four games. But I would say overall the offense is a little better and the defense is not nearly as good as I thought it would be.
No, it's had some moments. The Marquette game was almost like you had to go take a shower. I'm sure that they did too. So, Ashley, there's four left, and they have Texas coming up. Obviously, a tough game. Trying to get one back from Jerome Tang in Kansas State tomorrow night in Manhattan. Texas game sold out. The Iowa State game, I think the next Saturday, is an 11 o'clock tip. That's been put out. What is right now, if the tournament started today, where would you think Baylor's ceiling is?
Oh, they're definitely a Final Four capable team. I think they have – I believe in the staff. I think it's the best staff in college basketball. I think they've proven that, the last 4 years that they, with their record, I mean, let's put things in perspective. The game against Kansas, as bad as that was their 20th loss in the last 4 years, playing in the toughest conference in college basketball. Kansas has more losses than that the last 4 years. I mean, that's just an incredible stat. So I do think that, this staff will make the adjustments needed. We'll have Baylor playing great basketball if they can stay healthy. If this team is healthy, they're absolutely a capable Final Four team. They can get beat. I mean, they've proven that, but they're losing to good teams. They're losing to top 15 teams, so it's not like they're losing to teams that you're going to play the first weekend. It's more teams that you would play in that Sweet 16 weekend. And they've also shown they're capable of beating those types of teams as well. So I'm very bullish on the future of Baylor basketball despite the second half performance, and I think they'll respond really well in Manhattan tomorrow night.
What are the most notable differences between the K-State team that upset them a few weeks back and the one that they're going to be facing tomorrow on the road?
Their offensive efficiency is really taken a big hit. I mean, they're still playing terrific defense, and they eked out a really hard-fought win against Iowa State in what was a rock fight, 61-55 on Saturday. I was actually watching that game on the plane before I watched the Baylor-Kansas game, the first half on the plane at least. But I think the big thing for them is, they rely so heavily on Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson. They play them almost 40 minutes a game. And I think those guys are starting to wear down a little bit. They have other good players, Sills and Tomlin are really good. And obviously Masood killed us with that clutch three at the end of the game in overtime. So I mean, it's not like they don't have players, but I think they rely so heavily on Noel and Johnson that, if Baylor can, do a good job containing them and maybe forcing them below their normal efficiency offensively, I think if Baylor scores 70, it's a good chance that they win this game.
Did you see the seedings released of where everybody is? KU 1 seed, Texas, Baylor a 2 seed, Iowa State, yep. K-State a 3 seed. Did you agree with how that was set up?
Yeah. I thought it was really fair, and obviously a tremendous amount of respect for the Big 12, which the Big 12 has earned. And I think that at this point, Baylor, if they win the next 7 games, they're going to be a 1 seed. But if they end up, a 2 seed, that would be terrific. Certainly a 3 seed is highly possible as well. But they're probably going to fall on that 2 or 3 line most likely, which, is a great place to be, but to make a deep run. But you certainly want to try to get as high as possible, because it's like 40% of the number 1 seed make it to the Final Four. And those numbers start dropping with every, seed you go down. Your opponents are tougher, and it makes a lot of sense. But if you can get to that 1 line, that would be awesome.
Thank you, Ashley. Appreciate your time and for allowing us to do this show. Ashley Hodge. Yes, sir. 365 Sports, one of the partners, Colt Barber, Brian Etheridge, Ashley Hodge with us. Of course, the founders, umbrella of SicEm365.com, and then the show that we launched in April of 2020. Golly, I almost said 2022. It's been since 2020. All right, we'll have David Hellman, Fox Sports, a little bit later on, another segment or 2 from now. And this is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac. The Texas size selection is back. They've got over 150 vehicles on the lot and ready to drive home today. That includes dozens of Sierra trucks on the lot right now. Qualified buyers can save thousands on new 2023 GMC Sierra SLT 1500s. Get special financing on new 2023 GMC Sierra trucks. Just check out the dealer for details, or go see the good folks over at Richard Carr for more details. If you're not interested in a truck, they've also got luxury SUVs with the 2023 Buick Envisions. They've also got great deals there for qualified buyers. But if you're not in the market for new vehicles, they've got plenty of quality pre-owned cars with great deals as well. Cars, SUVs, and trucks in stock, many under $20,000. Affordable, thoroughly inspected, ready to drive home today, and ready to finance for almost any credit rating. Richard Carr has quality vehicles ready to drive at great prices, whether looking to buy new or pre-owned. And perhaps you're not looking to buy at all. You just want that car that you've been driving in to drive a little bit longer and to drive safely while you're in it. Then go Visit their award-winning service department, which is always standing by to keep you on the road. Go to richardcarr.com to see service specials and to set an appointment for quick and reliable service. In business for 23 years in Central Texas, Richard Carr has built a reputation as the people you can count on for your automotive needs. Run by proud Central Texans. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
During the President's Day sales event at Allen Samuels in Waco, get a 2022 Ram 1500 Quad Cab with 0% for 72 months or Ram 1500 Crew Cab with 1.9% for 72 months on all trim levels, only while supplies last.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
Pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby. Tell them Paul sent you by.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Hey, this is Bryce Petty, former starting quarterback and 2-time Big 12 champion, and I know firsthand the importance of being in top shape both on and off the field. So listen up, men. If you're feeling beat down day in and day out and looking for that high-performance edge that separates the men from the boys, then look no further than the Petty Clinic Low T in Waco. Petty Clinic is a comprehensive men's healthcare clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Board-certified Dr. Kent Petty has a special interest in offering the highest quality medical care to men of all ages. Some of the services offered include screening and treatment for low testosterone or thyroid, infertility, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, while offering comprehensive wellness exams and complete men's health lab panels. High performance men, remember, it's not just a Petty thing. This is Bryce Petty, encouraging you to reach out and Google search Petty Clinic Low T or go to pettycliniclowt.com and get your complimentary lab screening today.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Ben Erlinson, who'll navigate you through today's financial climate. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
That segment with Ashley Hodge, Baylor Men's Basketball Insider, brought to you by Richard Carr Motors, Baylor Bears Hotline. Baylor segments brought to you by Richard Carr People you can count on, Buick GMC, and also Cadillac. All right, we have David Hellman in the next segment, Paul Catalina, David Smoak, and also Craig Smoak. Chat room, for some reason I got disconnected for a second, but it's just humming along. We appreciate a lot of you. Here is Let's see, from Justin R. If the Pac-12 breaks up, then we would get at least 2 G5 teams in the 12-team playoff every year. They're not going to break up. I really don't think that way. And I hope for their sake it doesn't.
Also, that I don't mean to be callous here, but that's a little foolhardy to think that a Power 5 conference would break up and the other 4 would just be like, well, I guess we'll just let one of the other little guys in. That would be the benevolent thing for us to do. Let's do that.
Yeah, no, it's more likely it would be another SEC team than it would be a G5 team. I mean, I think we all see, like, there was murmurs about what's kind of been going on, happening a couple years ago. They got even hotter when Oklahoma-Texas deal happened, and then even hotter with the USC-UCLA thing happened. There's all this bickering over what the Big 12 is going to look like in 5 years, or what the Pac-12 is even going to exist in 5 years, and if it does, and I am assuming it will, what does this new expanded Pac-12 do? But, man, all of the talk about it basically being 2 conferences and then everybody else, I mean, that's coming to fruition as quickly as anything. I mean, and with the expanded playoff, like, yeah, we can all sit there and say, oh, yeah, like, oh, the Pac explode, there'd be a second G5. No, there wouldn't. There'd be a 5th SEC team or a 6th Big Ten team or what have you. That's how I feel about it anyways. I mean, I just feel like everything points in that direction, from the money differences to the way that they, made their moves, and then all of a sudden the playoff expands, like right after that, when, oh, no, we don't want the playoff expanding. Okay, Big Ten got what they wanted, SEC got what they wanted. All of a sudden, we're all on board with playoff expansion, and knowing that they'll both benefit greatly from it, and they'll both have more money to compete with than anybody else, and a huge, huge advantage when they already had advantages to begin with, but now those are greater than they've ever been. So, yeah, I mean, it's far more likely, like, 7th place Michigan State would get that final spot than 3rd place San Diego State, or it wouldn't be 3rd place, but like a 5th place Michigan State in the Big Ten versus a 2nd place Utah in the Pac-12. I think they'd probably be pretty even, honestly.
Yeah. Put it this way.
Okay, wait, say that scenario again.
Like a 5th place Big Ten team versus like a 2nd place Pac-12 team would have as much of a chance to get in the playoff.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. It all just depends.
How else are you going to have a playoff that's 12 teams with like 4 or 5 teams from one conference if you're not taking their 5th place team? And if you're doing that, then not everybody else is getting their top 2 or 3 in there.
Yeah, it's true.
So, I mean, and now that's nightmare scenario. But when people, you see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. When people predict, well, it's just going to be basically an SEC Big Ten playoff in the future.
No, yeah.
Well, they're allowing G5, so there's that. But if it gets to the point where, because of all the money and everything involved, and this playoff committee, we don't know how that's going to be designed and what that's going to look like. They may favor a team that's competing in the Big Ten schedule or the SEC schedule more so than the Big 12 runner-up or the Pac-12 runner-up, because they don't play as many tough teams, or they don't, have this or have that. They wouldn't stack up as well in the playoff. And I think, the TCU game, people can say what they want of like, oh, all that positive exposure, that was so great, and yeah, I wouldn't trade that for anything. I do think that did some damage. I absolutely just think that reinforced some damaging opinions on the play in conferences like the Big 12. I don't think that's going to mean that they're shut out forever from the playoff. They'll always have a spot, but I do think it's going to make everybody pause that maybe we're going to let a second team in there.
But here's my question, though. But with the TCU thing, yes, that was just disastrous. But does the game with Michigan not count? Does that just not count?
No, it counts.
But it's the way that...
Is it a perception thing?
It's absolutely a perception thing.
It's the faulty way that we view empirical evidence, right? We give more weight to one thing than another because the TCU-Georgia game was for all the marbles and not just to be in the all the marble game. That's different. They go, oh, Michigan was a one-off and this was how it really is, when really the evidence just tells us, well, one game they were great, the other game they weren't. That's all it tells us. It does not tell us anything long-term because they put so much more weight in that other game. The other issue, and to go back on there'll be another group of 5 team in it. Okay, when Circuit City closed, like when it went out of business and Radio Shack and all that, did you see a wave in your city in that building or in the town of mom and pop electronic stores opening up? No. Best Buy just bought the building. So that's what's going to happen if the Pac-12 goes away. It's not going to open it up for Chuck's stereo and audio. It's going to be a Best Buy on the other side of town. That's what it's going to be.
Or an Apple store or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to say sky is falling, but, I mean, if you look at the moves, and even when everybody's like, no, it's never going to turn into that, look at all the moves being made and where it's heading. Look at the TV deals and who those fit. Look at the expanded playoff and how that all came together. That didn't come together because of the Big 12 or the Pac-12. That came together because the two in charge wanted it to finally come together because they had finally gotten what they wanted, which was a couple of LA schools for the Big 10 and those two behemoths in Oklahoma and Texas for the SEC. Back-to-back summers. All of a sudden, TV deals are flying around, playoffs expanding, NIL's going crazy. That's not all for the ACC teams, and for the, you know what I mean? And so that's where you start to wonder about what this even looks like. And so all this fighting between the Pac-12 and the Big 12, yeah, you need to worry about survival right now. The Big 12's already been through that. The Pac-12's dealing with it right now. But the whole survival game's like far from over.
No, and you know who told us that? Our friend from Oregon, Crepea, right?
James Crepea.
Yeah, Crepea. He's the one that had. Here's what I got a question. Okay, TCU, it was embarrassing. What happened against Georgia, the worst case scenario for the Frogs, and it may be in some cases, even though the Big 12 got a nice week of publicity or two. Ohio State was beaten by Alabama 52-24 just 3 years ago. Now, I understand Ohio State has some skins in the wall, big ones, crowns, trophies, rings, and all that. Did that affect their perception? They were beaten 52-24 by Alabama. No matter how good Alabama is, they were beaten badly.
They weren't rolling in there with their first appearance in decades, and they weren't rolling in there with basically the smaller schools on their back as the representative of, okay, we finally let you in, and here was your chance. And you're right, the Michigan game gets glossed over. And then even worse is like the people who want to poke, well, Michigan didn't do this or Michigan didn't do that.
Michigan
well, that's part of the game.
Yeah.
That's part of the dadgum game.
Yeah.
So that's Michigan's fault. That's not a knock on TCU. And that shouldn't be a reason why TCU gets punished because Michigan decided we're not going to play our best game today. Or they weren't allowed to play their best game because the other team played better than them.
Yeah.
But that does get glossed over because that doesn't fit the narrative. I think, though, how it does fit the narrative is, I mean, if we're just being totally honest here, and I try to pride myself on being as honest as I can at all times to a fault, is you can argue all you want to about these playoff spots and all that, but what Big 12 team or what Pac-12 team right now is equipped to not only go beat Michigan, but then go and beat Georgia, and then, you're not done yet. Then you need to go beat Alabama as well, or someone along those lines, or in Ohio State in a third game.
I don't know how many teams in America are equipped for that.
Yeah.
No
There's
matter
like 5 of them, and then the ones that have all been winning it here as of late. There's Georgia, there's Alabama, Texas and Oklahoma, probably one of them or both of them think that they'll be in that party as well. And USC and Michigan and Ohio State, obviously it's the same ones. But, I mean, yeah, like everybody's fighting for survival. But, like, as far as winning a national title, that road's only gotten harder for everybody. And there's only so many schools that are already equipped to be able to do that. It's only going to be more difficult because now you're playing another playoff game.
Steve has mentioned this, Cincinnati fan Steve, that we're only going to get more blowouts.
Yes.
Well, in the short term, definitely. In the short term, definitely. The foolhardy thing to do would be, again, to go, well, we're only getting more blowouts, and it's only been 3 years.
That's weak sauce, yeah.
Yeah. This is, the 12-team playoff is a 50-year move. This is about making college football better and the playoffs more palatable and more people competing over the long term, not the short term. But the problem is we're the country that invented the microwave, right? And that's what we want. We want our bag of popcorn in 90 seconds, and we don't want anything in between. So waiting for that is going to be hard, and it's going to be a lot of consternation, and the excuse of, well, there's going to be blowouts
that's weak.
is going to be weighing down, and then you'll have people who are, the elitists the whole time saying, look, this was fine before. It was fine at 2. It should have never been 4.
Oh, there's already those guys.
So there's already those people out there, but the thing is the system was never set up for more teams to have opportunities. You just have to let that grow. So that means, transfer portal, NIL, and the 12-team playoff will change this game. We've seen how fast transfer portal and NIL have already changed it. The 12-team playoff won't change it as fast because, again, the teams at the top will control it. But it will change it if you give it time and treat it the right way. But if you keep, if you keep trying to funnel it to where it's only the elites, then it will.
I was going to say, it can change over time, and you can have an SMU that in theory could go compete because they have a massive NIL situation going on. And they are, you can argue that there is part of them that is, you can see the appeal for the Pac-12. They are a little bit of a sleeping giant potentially, but it is going to take some time. And my whole thing is, I'm in favor of the expanded playoff because I don't see how we're going to get more I mean, I kind of see how we'll get more blowouts, but I think those first rounds of games should probably be pretty competitive for the most part because you're going to have more teams that are in the same 10 to 12 range.
The question is would giving the bye to how many teams
advantage,
is an advantage already, and on top of that, another team has already played in a game.
Right, and so I definitely understand where that's come from, but that has nothing to do with the first round games.
Right,
the first round games,
it could be fantastic.
We don't play that because they're blowouts, so what are you talking about? That makes absolutely no sense, but that's a whole nother thing. But, yeah, I'm just saying that for all of the scratching and fighting and clawing right now, for those on the outside sort of looking in, it's only headed more in that direction. So survive, while you can right now, but there's still a huge battle that's coming down the pipeline in the years to come. So that's why I'm very interested to see how the Pac-12 positions himself. We already know how the Big 12's positioned itself. I think TCU breaking through was a really good thing for the conference. But I do think when they turned around and got beat the way that they did, that kind of brought all of that back. See, that's exactly why we can't have this or have that. And I think that's where it became far more damaging than you could have anticipated because it did sort of just brush that Michigan win to the side.
And then Alabama hammering Kansas State in the Sugar Bowl. And it's interesting, though, that if certain conferences have opportunities for success and fail, it doesn't count. Because they have skins in the wall where other conferences in the Big 12, my God, Texas in 2009, Oklahoma numerous times on the threshold of winning or playing for a national championship, didn't get it done. And there have been some bowl game meltdowns, too. And in the fact that TCU, great run, but, man, that was a sour ending, but still a hell of a year. But does that sting when the committee starts to get together next year? Much less the expansion coming up in a couple of years. All right, when we come back, David Hellman, Fox Sports, thoughts about what's on the radar right now, what's happening, what are the thoughts, focus, stories in the NFL, including the quarterback domino effect involving David Carr. This is 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace, your hometown grocery store, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco. And this week's specials for the entire week through Saturday: top sirloin steak, $6.50 a pound. T-bone steak, $8.50 a pound. Man, when I was a young kid, and my dad, when it was time, and it wasn't a lot, but when we had steaks, my dad would throw the T-bones on the grill, and they were spectacular. And, man, Waco Custom Marketplace, sirloins, fillets, bone-in ribeyes, porterhouse, T-bones, all of the above. In fact, their porterhouse, $8.99 a pound. Pork spare ribs, $2.05 a pound. St. Louis style ribs, they're so juicy and delicious, $2.75 a pound. And baby back ribs, $2.25 a pound. Fresh chicken tenders for $1.99 a pound. German sausage and hot links at $3.75, $3.50 a pound. Chorizo at $1.99 a pound. You have what you need there. There is a full-service butcher shop and bakery, Waco Custom Marketplace at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
The future's bright, the time is now. Destiny is calling, can you hear the sound?
This isn't just another song. This is the soundtrack of life at Baylor.
There's a spark in your heart and a fire that's in your eyes.
If you're ready to take a big step toward a bright future, tap the banner below to check out the music video for a glimpse of life at Baylor University, where lights shine bright.
When we moved to Texas, we were like fish out of water. We didn't know anyone in our neighborhood until our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent came to the house. She was so helpful and reassuring, a friendly face with that Texan hospitality I'd heard about. When we purchased a Texas Farm Bureau insurance policy, we knew we were making the right choice. We knew our family would be protected.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The Butcher Shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrapped fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes. Cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Baylor Scott and White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics. The team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, hand or wrist injuries, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trusts. Baylor Scott and White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Welcome back to 365 Sports. It's time for our weekly segment with David Hellman of FoxSports.com.
David Hellman with us Mondays. Football season's never over, even though the games aren't going to be played. It's kind of a sad thing to say that for quite some time. David, thank you very much for your time. So now the combine, and then, of course, a lot of things between now and the draft. Let me ask you this. How much does the David Carr future and where he ends up set the domino effect among quarterbacks in the NFL in the offseason?
It's a good question. I think it matters just because, and I think that's why, Derek Carr is smart enough to know to use his leverage to get himself released instead of traded, because now obviously it's the best for him because he has the chance to pick his destination, but he's got a head start. None of this other stuff can happen at least until the franchise tag deadline, when you can start tagging guys and that enables you to trade them. So, he's got another 2 weeks to set this off. And then, wherever he winds up going, that's a place that an Aaron Rodgers or a Daniel Jones or a Lamar Jackson can't go. So, I think it's – and on top of that, Derek Carr's – he's not an old quarterback. He's only 31 years old, I believe, but he is a 9-year vet who's coming off a disappointing season. I'm fascinated to see if he's good enough to set the market. Like, is Derek Carr good enough to command a $45 million type of salary, or does he have to settle for something a little bit less? I think the price and the location is going to dictate a lot about the musical chairs at quarterback this year. And I don't know if it's going to happen tomorrow, but I would imagine it happens certainly before the start of the league year and probably before that franchise tag deadline, which I believe is at the end of next week. So, sometime in the next 8-9 days, I would imagine we'll hear something, and that'll kind of set it off.
Dave, I've been diving kind of deep into – I've been in a lot of mock draft simulators. It's one of those, like, YouTube hole time wasters that
you could lose the whole afternoon in there. You got to be careful.
No, I feel like I've aged. Like, I really genuinely get out and I think I might have missed the next election. It's like takes that long. But really, if you look at some of the value for the Cowboys and their picks, outside of quarterback and I want to say tackle, but I'm not completely married to that. I think almost any position in any round, just based on the age and the way that things go at any position, they could really kind of hit and win with because 26 is kind of a weird spot to pick.
Yeah, I feel like a broken record, but I'm always trying to point out to people, maybe, if you don't follow the draft religiously or if this is your first time getting into it, I'm always trying to remind people, like, look, in the eyes of the NFL, there might be 14 first-round grades. And in a really amazing draft class, maybe you get all the way up to 20, maybe. But so, like, in the eyes of the league, pick 26 is a second-round pick. And so, yeah, that can kind of change the math. Like, when you talk about positional value, the Cowboys would probably say they don't want to draft a defensive tackle in the first round unless he's got the pass rush capability. But if you're picking 26, please help me. Your run stuffing guy at Baylor that used to play at LSU.
Ika.
What's his name?
Ika. Yeah.
If a guy, and maybe 26 is too early, but again, like, you feel better drafting a guy like that at the back end of the round as opposed to at the top end. And it's the same thing with Bijan Robinson. That's already, it's going to be the flashpoint argument for Cowboy fans for the rest of the year is, well, if the best running back in the class is available at 26, that's a bargain. And there's going to be people that say, I don't care, you should never draft a running back that high. And people are going to say, yeah, but it's not even really a first-round pick. And so that's where the fun of the draft comes in, is there's a million different ways to look at it and a million different interpretations of what the best value is. But, yeah, I mean, in general, I agree with you. Like, when you're picking 26, it's just hard to – and again, like, when you talk about value, like, okay, maybe guard isn't that valuable a position, but would you rather have the second best guard in the class or the fifth best receiver in the class, just as an example? So I love that type of stuff. It's part of the reason why I love the draft. And I guess the upside of where the Cowboys are picking is that you're kind of in a sweet spot where it's not too early to pick anything.
Yeah, and I think with Bijan Robinson in particular, that if he's there at 26 and available, I think they would be – I don't know if they would pick him either way based on their offseason, but I think he's definitely their pick if they get super bold at running back and decide not to bring back both Pollard and Zeke. Then they pick Bijan Robinson. If they bring back Pollard, then maybe they let Bijan go.
If Bijan's available and Jerry Jones is on the clock, you're going to have to kill him not to take him.
I'm sure, yeah. But that's my scenario. If Will McClay was completely in charge of the room, that's what I think they would do.
Oh, see, and again, you have to consider all of that, and that's I get frustrated. I don't have a problem picking Bijan Robinson 26th overall. Honestly, for the amount of oxygen that we're giving this, I'll be shocked if a prospect that good falls all the way to 26. I mean, we see every year teams are not afraid to draft running backs highly if they think that much of them. So for the starters, I would be shocked if he's even there. I don't mind the idea of having Bijan Robinson on this team as long as he's the most expensive running back on your team. Like, if Bijan Robinson is drafted 26th overall and Malik Davis is his backup and you sign a journeyman veteran to be the third guy, that's fine with me. But what I think would be bad team building is if you're paying Tony Pollard $11 million or God forbid you extend him for the long term and you're paying Tony Pollard $36 million and maybe you work out a pay cut with Zeke so that you're paying him $3 million. So now you've got what? $15 million allocated to the running back position and then you draft Bijan Robinson? That's where I start to get nervous and say, hey, do you understand positional value, Cowboys? Like, do you understand that there are positions that are more important to winning in the modern NFL than running back? So that's what I have my eye out for. But, like, in a vacuum, if you told me that they let Tony Pollard walk and collected a comp pick for him and they either cut Zeke outright or drastically reduced his salary, and then drafted Bijan Robinson, I'm all on board, man. It's just all about money allocation for me.
David, what were your thoughts about the story with Bieniemy going to Washington?
I think, I just got off of Speak on FS1. We do 90 minutes a day, and I think we did 60 of the 90 on Eric Bieniemy. I think it's really interesting. I think we are at a point, we've done this enough times with Eric Bieniemy where, like, after a certain point, when you're a part of a successful offense for this long and you're still not getting a shot, I'm comfortable assuming there's more to it. Like, I don't think it's racially motivated, at least not completely. I think, there's got to be something to the idea that teams aren't sold on his qualifications because he doesn't call plays or because he's a hard guy to get along with. And I look at it, and I mean, how many times, if you have the resume of Eric Bieniemy and you've been a coordinator of a successful offense for this long, and you can't get a sniff anywhere while, guys younger and less experienced than you are becoming head coaches, at what point do you take matters into your own hands? And I think that gets lost. It's like all of these guys have a tremendous amount of confidence in their own ability. I don't know if it's going to work out for him, but I think at some point it'd be fine if you had to wait 2 or 3 years to get your shot. But once you hit 5 or 6 years, I think you say, okay, clearly I've got to do more, and I'm going to go do it, because sitting around waiting to burst through this ceiling because of somebody else isn't working for me. So I respect it. I think a lot of people can relate to that. Like, you hang, how long are you hanging around? Like, what's the difference between patience and stagnation? And I think around 5 or 6 years is where you start to say, okay, I'm not growing anymore. My career is getting stagnant. So it sucks for him that this is what he had to do, but I don't blame him for doing it at all.
Yeah, David, is like some of the excuses are weird to me. Like the one you said, he's not easy to get along with. Like, well, there's lots of guys out there that aren't easy to get along with.
A lot of football coaches are jerks, man. Take it from me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't think Sean Payton's a peach, as far as it comes down to. I don't think John Gruden, who's in the NFL a long time, and the only reason he's not currently is because he sent emails to the GM of the team that Eric Bieniemy is working for now. But I don't think he was a peach either. So, again, I don't think it should be about that at all.
No, of course not. And I don't think there's a good answer for why it hasn't happened for him. And I guess the closest I can come up with is that people discount his resume because he has the best quarterback in football and he's got a Hall of Fame head coach calling the plays for him, which that's fine if that's how people feel. And maybe they're right for that matter. Like, I don't know for sure that Eric Bieniemy is some great coach, but if I were him, I would say enough is enough. Clearly sitting here in this situation, it's been beneficial for me to a point, but if I feel like I'm getting left behind or my career's not growing, then I'm going to do what I need to do to try to advance it on my own terms.
David, thank you. As always, we appreciate it. There is no offseason in the National Football League because they have taken up every month with something that matters. The Combine, of course, around the corner. We'll come back with Paul Catalina's Top 5 to close out this opening day of this week. And this is 365 Sports.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less.
sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance, and there are no hidden costs, even offering financing if that's needed. Everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Hi, this is Paul Catalina. I recently got engaged to the love of my life, but the most important thing that I had to do before I popped the question was get that perfect ring. And I know nothing about rings. So I went to the wedding ring store, Boozer's Jewelers on Valley Mills Drive. I knew I needed a custom design, and that's exactly what they do. 9 out of 10 of their engagement rings are designed in-house. The entire process took less than a month, and they were great every step of the way. Great options on financing, excellent selection, and talented designers. My fiance and I get nonstop compliments on the ring. I only deserve credit for doing the smartest thing I could, walking into Boozer's and letting them work their magic. Your one-of-a-kind fiance deserves a one-of-a-kind ring, and that's what you get at Boozer's. Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store on Valley Mills Drive.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5 at 5:45. Or is it 5:55? Either way, it's the Top 5.
Top 5 realignment thoughts of the day. I saw a lot, and I'm gonna preface this by saying, look, there's a lot of people send me, like Dylan Vance sends me a lot of great stuff on Twitter. I love you, Dylan. He's fantastic. But a lot of the stuff that you see about realignment out there right now, and Pete Thamel did a really good column looking at every issue. And one of these questions has done that. But he did not make any assumptions. He just kind of put everything out there as this is how it stands now. But if you hear somebody that says they've got new information, they don't.
Well, they may, but today wasn't any new information.
No.
I mean, that was kind of I did see a couple people like, did y'all read the new Thamel? And it's like, there wasn't any like breaking news in there. I will say though, like if you read like the very first part of that, and this was completely unintentional, but I realized after our segment just a second ago, that's exactly what he was talking about, was the whole separation, was it not? Like that was basically the gist of the beginning of it, at least, was that separation, that gulf that's been created, and how like the moves that are being made now like are not going to be the only ones. Like there's still more to come. It's just that nobody has any idea what that looks like.
Here's the thing about the speculation. There are people that you can watch and see if they're usually right or at least on point, and there are some that are going to throw as many things against the refrigerator like you would a spaghetti noodle and hope the noodle sticks.
Just because there's engagement.
I mean, we could all do clicks and views, and there are some doing it pretty well. But my goodness, if you don't hit pretty soon and it's like once a year, then you lose credibility.
I just don't think that, like when I say you have new information, I don't think there's any new actionable information over the last week or so. I mean, like the only actionable information, as a matter of fact, is either going to be the official announcements of SMU and San Diego State and the TV deal. And then once those things happen or don't, then we can start talking about the next steps.
Well, if those don't happen first and those don't happen soon, then I mean, something's going to have to give.
Yeah, exactly. So, but number 5, and you see all this sniping and all this stuff about, if the Pac-12 does this, and is this what you really want? If you're a college football fan, are you enjoying the theoretical journey more than you would the real one? Like, do you really think that, like, everything's going to be better for your league if you get Washington State and Colorado? Like, or do you think that's really good, or do you just want to see the other one collapse? And I'll liken this. I use a lot of American Idol analogies because it was a fascinating American experiment and continues to be. Everybody loved watching the show and voting for people.
Yep.
But how many times have you downloaded Ruben Studdard or Clay Aiken's albums or bought them? Clay Aiken sold so few records, he ran for Congress. Okay, that's
Ruben Studdard had some pipes.
Yeah, and he's a great.
But I never bought it.
But he's great. But you didn't buy the album. You were enthralled.
I was mesmerized with his story
for the journey and the story. But when he got done and he won the thing, and he's like, "Hey, buy my record so I can do this professionally." You're like, I don't care.
Okay.
Well, I don't think this is what anybody wanted. This is what they're having to deal with.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody wanted the Big 12 to have to go and get BYU. I mean, like, it depends on who you ask. Is this what BYU wanted? Yep. Is this what Cincinnati wanted? Yep. Is this what SMU wants? Absolutely. Is this what OU and Texas and USC and UCLA wanted? Yep, clearly. But for everybody that didn't have a decision to make or was a part of a major decision of moving somewhere, I think everybody's just trying to make the best of the situation. It's not what you wanted. If you asked Iowa State fan what they wanted, then I'm sure that was a Big Ten invite that's never coming, and they're not AAU now. Did you guys see that? They've dropped out of the AAU, Iowa State. So any long shot that you thought that maybe like the big, I mean that was so far and away a long shot anyways, but they're not even AAU now.
I didn't know that Nebraska lost their AAU once they joined the Big Ten.
But no, I think it's everybody trying to make the best of the situation. No Pac-12 fan randomly is like, it'd be awesome. Let's add SMU. But hey, SMU's the key to you possibly surviving past the next 5 years, then yeah, bring on SMU. I think that's what it is. Same thing with the four new schools in the Big 12. You didn't necessarily want Houston, but if Houston's going to help keep you afloat and keep you on ESPN and Fox and making the same money, then welcome, Cougars, But nobody wanted this necessarily unless you were benefiting from it, which was four Big 12 schools or four now Big 12 schools and then, the other LA schools and OU, Texas.
Yeah. Number 4, what happens when this is over? So, or is there an end to it? Maybe it would be the better way to put this. Like, what is the end to this? And we've asked this question before, but I do think for college football fans, it bears mentioning that we should, because I think it took us 50 years, but we finally got a playoff the size that we're maybe comfortable with.
Maybe who's comfortable with?
College football fans are comfortable with for a little while.
I think
that's
debatable.
But at least we got to see it.
At least there's a playoff.
At least they got it done.
Which is something I never thought I'd ever see in my life.
So, but what do you want overall from all this?
Well, I think you got to ask the heads of the Big Ten and the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're the driving forces of this entire thing, along with the TV networks. So you might even need to ask ESPN and Fox as much as anybody else. What is their vision? Because, I mean, like, this isn't ideal for most involved, but, I mean, it is fascinating stuff. That's why everybody talks about it all the time, because it's absolutely interesting on multiple different levels, and the fantasy booking part of it is the most fun part of it. But I think you got to ask the TV execs that are in charge of what they see as the future, because it very well may be that streaming right now, and I do want to credit some Pac-12 folks for pointing this out, it is, it isn't maybe what we look at right now and think predominantly streaming would be great, but in 5 years, maybe it is. Maybe it is. Now, I don't think the Pac-12 will be spearheading that charge necessarily, but maybe it is. But I think it remains to be seen what the end game is, because that's only in the minds right now of the TV networks and probably 2 leagues. And quite frankly, for all we know, the end goal, what happens when this is over is the SEC and the Big Ten break off and maybe even slim down a little bit more, or maybe they add some SEC schools here in a few years, and then they create this final form of what this is ultimately going to look like, of a top 32 or something along those lines, where it's the haves that don't have as much, and then they totally have nothings in a third tier. Same kind of setup almost, but just different.
Just the numbers are changed.
Different groupings.
I don't think there ever is over.
Yeah,
maybe
not. That's another thing. It's like this is ever, and then like sometimes perpetual.
Do you want to be the person that ends up killing college football for 75 schools?
No, I don't.
Do you want to be that person?
No.
Now, no matter the money or the ego, I don't think Greg Sankey and or whoever the Big Ten commissioner might be, Kevin Warren maybe, because he seemed like he had that killer instinct, and I'm not saying Sankey doesn't, or your market, but I don't want to be that person that kills college football on 65 campuses, at least the way we've had it competitively.
I think for the most part, when Sankey says some of the things he says that are like only SEC specific, he's using a scare tactic to get what he actually wants, because the other, like, if it was up to Greg Sankey, he would just pick up the phone and be like, Big 12, we're doing this. We're doing that. Like, let's get this done. Here's my plan. Let's go. Because he was involved in the playoff committee planning in the first place.
Right.
If it was up to him alone, then a lot of this stuff would already be done, and there wouldn't be any kind of like this crosstalk that we're going on.
I think he's gotten right up to the edge of doing that, and then I think he realizes he doesn't want to be Hitler of college football.
No, but he wants is he's going to use that scare tactic, so they're like, well, I don't want that.
Yeah.
Let's get to the table. That's what he does. Which leads into this. Would it not benefit college football leaders to speak more openly with each other about these topics?
That's too many words.
But would it?
But it makes sense. Yeah.
But would it not?
Yeah.
Like,
no.
Like, they've got to stop pretending.
You think they trade text messages?
I think they do. I just don't think that they are. There's so much cloak and dagger BS going on here that, and I get that it's every man for himself. If you are really going to be like the NFL, look, the NFL owners, all these groups negotiate together as a group.
There are 32 teams who all have a common.
Yes, but guys, they are equal.
Exactly.
This is not equality we're talking about.
No.
The Ohio State admin doesn't give a dadgum damn about what's going on at Iowa State.
Yeah.
Know, or Baylor.
Well,
or,
even when Texas was leaving, remember the quote? I forgot who it was, but like, what about the others?
But it's not his job to have to throw the life raft out to Washington State.
I agree.
You know?
No, but my point is, and this is maybe too idealistic, which you never get from me, but when you look at it as a whole, if you're trying to make the whole thing better and not just your own situation better, because eventually the more selfish you get, then the more that gets thrown back against you, and you will suffer. Mark Cuban, I've heard him say it for years, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered, and that's what I worry about with college football is that you've got these hogs, and eventually they're just going to get slaughtered because it's not going to be anything that people want to watch.
Yeah, you wonder if any of those commissioners truly do communicate with each other. Are they, like you hear about, there's the Board of Governors, you have AD meetings, the NCAA convention.
Yeah, but
do the commissioners of the 5 Power 5 conferences ever truly sit down and have a frank discussion about life in the future?
I mean, I'm sure they do to some extent, but we're also comparing it to the NFL where there's one guy in charge and there's 32 teams, and that's
32 guys in charge of one guy.
Okay, well, I mean, however you want to look at it.
Right.
I mean, the same thing could be said then about the commissioners. Well, the commissioners, then that's not 5 commissioners. That's 80-something whatever schools that are actually in charge, not the 5 commissioners if we want to do it that way. So even still, 32 who are all pretty equal, who all get the same good, better, worse, for however, the business goes, they all get it the same, basically. And now, there's differences as like ticket revenues and things like that, but it's all pretty much like the same. This is all across the spectrum of haves and have-nots.
And that's why I don't think it's ever
schools.
over.
And it's just a way different ball game you're playing with.
I do think they should benefit by talking more openly about it. And look, if it's Ohio State
Maybe they do.
But if it's Ohio State saying, look, we don't give an F about you, Iowa State, at least they said it out loud.
Yeah.
Well, Kevin Warren just tells everybody, hey, we're taking the LA schools.
Yeah.
And we're letting you know about it.
Yeah. But. Well, number 2, what does the ACC think about all this?
Does it matter?
Oh, I mean, it matters to them.
I mean, like right now?
Yeah, I think it matters to them because they've got to watch this and then watch.
I actually have great respect for the conference that's not being flippant because of how long they have left. What does their opinion matter right now?
I'm talking about does it matter to the other 4? Probably not. But it does matter for them individually in the conference. Like, how do we in 2036 catch up to all this?
No, it will never get to that point.
Again, okay, so then it does matter because they got to do it before then. So it absolutely does matter.
If they wait till 2036, they're going to be like on an island.
Pete Thamel pointed this out, is that the ACC has a different kind of split than a lot of the other leagues. The Pac-12 has this a little bit, but the ACC really has a problem in that they've got several big athletic powerhouses and juggernauts. And then they've got Duke, who's good at one thing. that everybody knows. I'm not trying to knock everything, but like Duke's known for one thing. Georgia Tech, for Wake Forest, they've got a bunch of little privates like that too that don't really care as much or can't, even if they cared a lot, no matter how much they care, they cannot commit the resources that Florida State, Clemson, and Miami, even though they're a private school,
they can because of the TV deal.
Well, I mean
how does Vanderbilt do it?
Well, but they're in this. In the island in the SEC. You're not following me at all. And
no,
that's
I absolutely follow. What I'm saying is, I get it. I'm having respect for them, but my point is, what do they think about Wake Forest and no different than Vanderbilt in the ACC, right? Georgia Tech no different than the ACC and Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
So they're going to get their money,
but they're not getting that much, and so like their gap. So the reason that Vanderbilt gets the money they get has nothing to do with Vanderbilt. It has everything to do with who they're aligned with, right? So
that's the way it is in college sports.
Okay. So if you're the ACC and Georgia Tech gets as much money as Florida State, but Florida State's pissed off because their conference can't get them as much money, then Georgia Tech's eventually going to get screwed because Florida State will go somewhere that they can. That's why it matters what the ACC thinks right now, because Georgia Tech does not have value on its own. Georgia Tech has value because they're attached to Clemson and North Carolina and Florida State. That's why they have value. If those schools get pissed off and watching this and have to wait a decade until they get theirs, then that's going to be a problem.
Yeah. I get what you're saying there. I do understand what you're saying.
And I thought about this because Pete Thamel wrote about it today, but I thought, that's a great point. Is how long does the ACC stay calm about this, and how until they try to do something, because they really don't have the freedom to move, but they could get angry in a hurry.
We're coming up on 2 years since Texas and Oklahoma, and what have they done?
Nothing yet. That's why I'm asking the question. Yeah. You're kind of jumping on a different street than I'm going down here.
Man, I know it's your top 5, but I'm not allowed to have an opinion.
No, you're having an opinion, but we're not talking about the same thing. We're clearly not.
Actually, I think I am. You go ahead. Go to number 1, I guess.
No, I'm not trying to get you mad. I just think that
you're the one yelling.
I'm not yelling.
I'm saying, what does the ACC think about it? What does it matter? Yes, that doesn't mean they can't have their opinions, but they're all in it together. They're still in the same grant of rights. They're still in the same. You're not listening to me.
No, I get that it's a long time, and that's your point. I'm saying that.
But if they wait till 2036, there won't be an ACC.
Exactly. So we're kind of on the same page here, and that's why I'm saying, like, they've got to react faster than they are, but there's a division that we're talking about here in that.
So you think Florida State, Clemson will just dump those other ones to go to another conference?
I think
Oklahoma, Texas
I think if you look across the conference and you're Clemson and South Carolina is making 3 times as much money as you, and you're Clemson, it's going to piss you off.
So what they're thinking does make sense, but at the same time, there's a lot of camaraderie, even with the money involved. Clemson's going to be just fine. But are they going to leave? Are they just going to dump Georgia Tech and Virginia Tech like Texas and OU? Same thought there? Same mindset there? Same arrogance there? Same ego there?
Not this morning.
Okay.
Not today.
All right.
But do this over a long period of time like the Big 12 did, and then eventually there is, right? So that's what I'm talking about. And number 1, where does any leftover TV money go? Because there's the thing, okay, if you think the Pac-12 is going to go away, you might think, hey, that television money will now go into our league. And it might. But if you listen to what Bob Iger said last week about Disney, is that they have to be more judicious with their television money, with their rights money. So if they're doing that and the industry is changing, then the bottom line is that you may not, if it goes from the Power 5 to the Power 4, you may not be getting what you think out of that deal. So just be wary of that if you're rooting for this to happen, that some of that TV money may not go where you think it's going to go, because that's changing rapidly.
Well, that's the whole thing. How much of that money that's left over is even headed towards the Pac-12, or if not, where does it go? And is there that much money they want to spend anymore based on what we wrote or what was sent to us last week on what was Iger and what they were thinking about at Disney and ESPN?
Yep. So there you go. There you have it.
TJ, no other end. People are going to go and let's have 24 teams, and it's 36 teams, and then when they get to 36 teams, they're going to want 48 teams. It's going to be like backwards. It's like an inverse order, so to speak. All right, thanks to Garrett Ross. Thank you, Emery Winter. Appreciate it. Don't forget tonight, 10:30 Sports Tonight on the CW channel, and we're back tomorrow. Iowa State AD Jamie Pollard is on the NCAA Men's Basketball Committee and the AD at Iowa State. He's one of our guests tomorrow. Oklahoma State's AD, Mr. Weiberg, will join us on Wednesday and more. This is 365 Sports.